What was the saddest thing that ever happened to you in your childhood? Scooping up her warm entrails just made my heart ache. I had never felt pain like that before. My stepdad was very stern, and although I loved him dearly, sometimes living with his rules was hard. When I was a kid we lived out in the country and this very pregnant dog showed up on the farm. My stepdad told us not to feed it cause we already had more dogs than we needed and if we fed her she might stick around and have her puppies. So of course we secretly fed her. Just as my stepdad predicted, she had her puppies. We were thrilled but knew we would have to hide them from my stepdad. He is not a cruel man but he would have put them down. It might be hard for a lot of people to stomach but we were living pretty hand to mouth and he lived in a reality of food for dogs versus food for kids. We didn't have the money to support a stray dog's puppies. We didn't even have the money for gas to take them to the nearest shelter. After a few weeks of sneaking the mama dog food in the back of our feed shed, she stopped showing up. I worked at a dairy farm so I started sneaking a little milk home in my saddlebags to feed the pups. Unfortunately, after a few weeks of that, my stepdad found them and was pretty irate over the disobedience and the milk we stole. However, with much pleading my sisters and I convinced him to let us keep them. He said he wasn't paying for medicine or food. Fine by me. I could make enough in a few weeks at the dairy farm to get this done. Unfortunately, orphan puppies have weak immune systems and they all got sick before I had the money for medicine. My sisters and I spent all day and night for several days trying to keep them alive with an eyedropper of water to keep them from getting dehydrated. One by one each pup succumbed to the illness. Eventually, only a single one was left and my stepdad, softened by our dedication, told us we could keep it if it lived. By some miracle she lived. We named her Sassafras and she was the cutest little corgi mutt. One day my stepdad calls to me and tells me to grab a towel. I come outside with a bath towel and he shakes his head no and sends me back to get a work towel. I come back out and he looks at me as sad as a true blue cowboy could look and says, "I'm sorry buddy, I didn't know she was there." He had accidentally backed over the puppy's head when he put the farm truck into reverse. Sassafras had been sleeping in the shade behind the tire. He told me that since she was my dog it was up to me to bury her. I will never forget how surprisingly hot the insides of my puppy were as I scooped her into a towel to bury her. I was heartbroken. A month or so later my stepdad comes into my room with a holding baby possum in his hand next to his chest. I was perplexed because possums were a bane on the farm cause they ate the chickens. I stood there confused, and he gruffly said, "Well, are you going to take it or not?" I cautiously reach out and grab it. It wasn't a possum, it was a blue heeler puppy. She turned out to be the most amazing dog. I was blessed to have her in my life for almost 17 years and could write a book on all the adventures we had together. I know my stepdad might get a lot of flack for this but he was an amazing man who taught me very much. He offered very real and often hard lessons in the realities of life. I know I am better for having him in my life. What have you witnessed that will haunt you forever? This reminds me of an accident by my house. Rural area, there's a bar up at the intersection of the main road which is a 55 miles per hour 2-lane road. Cornfields on either side, no street lights. Drunk guy staggered out of the bar after dark, walking in the center of the road. Some poor kid who just started driving on his own that week hit him in his parents' old Cadillac doing the speed limit. The drunk guy exploded. Pieces everywhere. One of his boots was in the ditch at the front of my lane with the foot still in it. Road was closed for hours while they cleaned up parts of the guy. I'll never forget the look on that kid's face, that boot with the foot and a piece of leg sticking out or the blood all over the road. Another wreck I didn't witness but my neighbors did, same intersection. Guy in a convertible blew the stop sign at the side road and got T-boned by a truck. He survived I guess pretty much unharmed but his girlfriend was decapitated. Guy went into shock, somehow found his girlfriend's head and was running around with it screaming. Police had to tackle him and take the head away. Yet another wreck, that again I didn't witness but neighbors did, same intersection again. Mom blows the stop sign, gets T-boned. Mom dead instantly, kid in the car survived. Firefighters had to cut the kid out of the car but had trouble pulling her out because the kid was clinging to her dead mom screaming. That one really shook up my neighbor's daughter who had twins about the same age as the kid in the car and a really bad habit of speeding. She slowed down after that. Am I the a-hole for not my dad's girlfriend to decorate the house that my wife and I pay for? So 3 years ago my dad was going through financial difficulties. My dad had always planned to leave me his house, and it was already written in his will. To help, my wife and I offered to pay 2/3 of the mortgage so that he didn't have to sell the house and in exchange my dad promised we would have full freedom for decorating/renovating the house, given that we paid for any new paint/renovation/etc. He lives alone and we visit for around 3 weeks total per year, spread out over several visits. My dad has happily volunteered to paint or help however he can with renovations. He has since put down a new floor in one of the rooms and painted 2 of the rooms, which we very much appreciate. We have also paid $12,000 for a new heating system. So far, we have paid roughly $35,000 between mortgage payments, minor renovations, and the new heating system. We are financially comfortable, but this is a significant amount of money for us. In our latest visit, we came to learn that his girlfriend made plans to paint and make other updates, new curtains/knobs/etc., to the main bathroom in the house. She visits for a few days at a time less than once per month. They have been dating for 7 years, and she has never made much of an effort to talk to me. We were upset when we heard about her plans, but still politely stated that we had other plans for the bathroom and would prefer it if she did not make any of her planned updates. She was upset about it. Am I the a-hole? Edit. When we started paying 2/3 of the mortgage payments my dad also put the house in mine and my wife's names. Adult entertainment workers, what was the saddest request you have ever received? One evening I was contacted by a guy for an evening dinner date, but wanted the whole evening. I agree a price that means I'll stick around until breakfast, and he asked me to meet him at a restaurant I knew. When I meet him in person, I couldn't believe my eyes. This guy was gorgeous, and I mean paid model pretty. I couldn't understand why he contacted me. The man had 3 stunning women eyeing him up as soon as he entered the room. Still, he was nice and sweet, although clearly incredibly nervous, so we sat and drank and talked, ate our food and generally had a pleasant evening. He took a while to open up, so I did most of the small talk to start with, but he soon opened up, and seemed like a real, genuine nice guy. Still baffled as to why this guy needed to hire a worker, the meal came to an end and he started to close up again. I started to think he had his V card who was super nervous. I called a cab to take us back to his place. When we got through the door, he rushed to the kitchen and grabbed a bottle of booze and just started chugging. I took the bottle off him and tried to get him to relax, told him to take a breath, put on some music and to meet me in the bedroom. Eventually he walked in, eyes turned to the floor. I sat him on the edge of the bed, unzipped his trousers. He was limp. I looked up at him to say something, and realized he was breathing heavily because he was trying to hold back tears, which wasn't working because they were rolling down his cheeks. He burst into tears and started sobbing uncontrollably. Turns out he was gay. He had tried coming out to his parents, and apparently his mom basically carried on like he hadn't said anything, but his dad just kept laughing. Saying it was a phase, he would get over it. When he tried to convince his dad the feelings were real, his dad made him phone me. We sat and talked for hours, about he had never been able to tell anyone about his interests, and that his parents had been the first people he confided in. He hadn't got many friends because he was worried about being bullied, and he had always known he was gay, so he had never had a girlfriend. I just cuddled him while he talked, not saying a word. When I left in the morning he tried to give me money, but I left it on his counter after he got in the shower. I wanted to text him later, to see if he ever sorted things out with his parents, but at the time I felt like he might think I was weird because I wasn't his friend. I was a call girl. A few weeks later I saw his picture on the local news, and my blood ran cold because I knew the instant I saw it what had happened. I heard from some friends in college that he took his life because his dad disowned him.
People who were close to someone that became a murderer, what was the most suspicious trait they displayed? Growing up, my little sister Jane was always a weird kid. I had my suspicions about her, but I never thought she would be capable of such a horrific act. The first incident happened because I had refused to sleep in her bed, which she believed was a sacrifice to protect her from the boogeyman. For 2 years, I wasn't allowed to sleep in my own room. Whenever I tried, Jane would throw a tantrum until our parents convinced me to stay in her room just so everyone could finally get some rest. They even installed a bunk bed, but Jane insisted we share a single bed. One night, I woke up to find Jane had wet the bed. I was upset not just because of the pee but also because I didn't want to be there in the first place. When I refused, Jane yelled to get back into the soaked bed. She got up and tried to attack me, accidentally smearing more pee on me. We were both screaming as our parents rushed in. Jane demanded I sleep in the pee-soaked bed while she took the dry spot against the wall as if nothing happened. Our parents disagreed, which distressed Jane. She then admitted she thought a monster lived in her closet. Sharing a bed was to protect herself, and she was terrified that if I moved rooms or mattresses, the monster would attack her. Nobody knew who this monster was, and initially assumed it was a figment of her imagination. Besides, she was only 5 years old. To address this, our parents removed the top bunk's mattress and the wet one below. They convinced me to be a good big sister and protect Jane from any monster. Reluctantly, I returned to bed with her. But soon after, Jane whispered that she made me sleep there because one day the monster would come eat one of us. She planned to escape while it attacked me. Without a word, I immediately went to my own room, willing to defend her from a monster but not be monster bait. When our parents responded to the noise, I refused to go back despite their pleading. Eventually they understood and let me have my own space. From then on, I slept with my door locked for safety. It was a hard time. Our parents didn't believe me when I said Jane had tried suffocating me, so I had to take precautions to protect myself. Over the next few years, there were 2 more notable incidents. Once, I caught Jane about to cut the brake lines on my bike. When confronted, she cried that she just wanted to play a harmless prank. Another time, she tried pushing me down the stairs but claimed it was an accident. Our parents shrugged it off as childish mischief, but I knew Jane wanted to seriously hurt me. The scariest moment was discovering Jane holding a knife over me while I slept. She said she just wanted to see what it was like to stab something. After that, I refused to let Jane in my room and put an extra lock on my door. As we got older, Jane's violent tendencies lessened but did not completely go away. When I was 15 and Jane was 13, we went on a family camping trip. One night we were roasting marshmallows by the fire. Out of nowhere, Jane shoved me off the log we were sitting on, making me fall backwards into the fire. My legs got burned, though thankfully not severely. Jane apologized and said it was an accident, but I knew she had done it intentionally. Another time, we were hiking through the woods when Jane suddenly pushed me into a thorn bush. I was bleeding from all the scratches and again Jane claimed it was an accident. She said she tripped and fell into me. Our parents believed her, even though I insisted she had attacked me. The worst incident happened when I was learning to drive at age 16. Jane asked me to drive her to her friend's house across town. As I was driving, Jane suddenly grabbed the steering wheel and jerked it sharply. We went off the road and crashed into a ditch. Thankfully neither of us were seriously injured, but the car was totaled. Jane pretended to be distraught and said she had accidentally grabbed the wheel when she lost her balance. Our parents believed her, but I knew Jane had tried to make us crash. After each of these incidents, I begged my parents to get Jane more intensive treatment. They would punish her mildly but still excuse her actions as accidents or carelessness. Jane was clever at hiding her violent tendencies from others. I felt isolated and afraid as it seemed I was the only one who knew how dangerous Jane could be. Finally, when I was 17, Jane tried to stab me when we were home alone. I managed to lock myself in the bathroom and call 911. This was the definitive proof I needed to show she was still a threat. Our parents could no longer deny Jane needed serious long-term treatment. She ended up going to a facility for troubled youth for several years. When she was released, my parents kept in touch with her from a distance, but I refused to speak to her. My parents weren't the ones that cut contact with her. Jane cut contact with them. Nobody heard from her for 2 months. Nobody knew where she lived. Nobody knew if she was even alive. That is, until we saw the news. We would have thought the police would have warned us beforehand, but we woke up one morning so see Jane on the news for first-degree murder. We couldn't believe it. After my parents went down to the station and demanded our questions to be answered, they told us that Jane had cut up the bodies and stored selective organs in jars, and dissected the rest. She got fit in the hospital.
What was the moment the quiet kid in your class snapped? Robert was a nice boy. He was well-spoken, smart, and obviously exposed by his parents outside of school to a range of arts, philosophy, and history. Topics that are not necessarily super cool when you are 16 years old and quite delicate. I believe his parents must have been very alternative as they wouldn't let him wear deodorant or proper shoes. Poor Robert, you could catch a whiff of his body odor long before hearing the shuffle of his socks and Jesus sandals heading in your direction. He was both perfectly lovely and quite awful to be around. He was an obvious target. For years the same boys hounded him. The teasing, pushing, picking on him must have been torture to face every day. The teachers, how didn't they notice? As a teacher now myself, I wonder how it was allowed to go on for so long. I suppose no one was getting seriously hurt, until that day. It was nothing really, just another comment in our woodshop class. Some random taunt from a regular bully. Given everything he'd suffered, a small verbal jab shouldn't have pushed him over the edge. Before anyone knew what was happening, Robert's stool flew back with a screech. Grabbing the metal legs with one hand he smashed the wooden seat against the bully's face. As blood sprayed across the table, screaming teenagers drowned out the panicked yelling from the teacher who was hurling himself across the classroom, and in the foreground the steady smack and crunch of Robert furiously pounding his stool into the body of the bully who was laying motionless on the ground. The stool was finally wrenched out of Robert's hands and his hopeless sobs echoed down the hallway as he was hauled away to the office. Robert had almost killed him. The bully had a dislocated jaw, a fractured cheekbone, a broken nose, broken ribs, and an arm broken in 2 places. He never returned to school. The bullies vowed to find Robert and kill him. I don't know what happened to him in the end, but I'll never forget the wild, inhuman look on his face as he lost himself utterly to rage and despair. Today I effed up by getting Google to ban our entire company while on the toilet. I work at a pretty sizable software company, with roughly 100 to 150 employees. We migrated to Gmail and other Google services about 2 years ago and have been relying on them and the email system to do our job. It's safe to say that everyone is using Gmail or Google in one way or another. Now, our Gmail accounts are set up to our company, so everyone is connected. Keep this in mind, as it will be relevant later. I have a friend who creates Android apps on the side. I do something similar to this, but instead my apps revolve around cloning app files and restoring them, similar to a service called Titanium Backup. As a joke, every time my friend releases an app, usually paid, I buy the app and clone it with my software, and then refund it. After that, I send him an email with the cloned version through Gmail with something along the lines of, "Look at this cool app I found on the store, it was completely free. Try it out," or stupid stuff like that. It was a bit of a stupid inside joke that kind of stuck for a while and was only between us. Recently he uploaded a new app and I did the same thing as usual. I was actually on the toilet at work at about 10 a.m. or so and was doing my business in the stall on my phone. I was on my work account and bought the app and refunded and all that jazz. I emailed it to him and then finished up in the bathroom and went back to work. About an hour later before lunch, everyone was talking to each other about problems accessing their Google accounts. At the time, it didn't click with me what had happened. One of my colleagues requested help and I went to check it out. It turns out that their account was blocked by Google due to violations. Their Google Payments account was blocked as well. I thought this was insane and wondered if it happened to me and everyone else in the building, and surely enough it did. We got banned by Google, all of us. The afternoon was pandemonium. We were all freaking out. Our IT guys were trying to get a hold of Google but couldn't get in touch with anyone. We could sign into our accounts but not do anything with them. All our work was shared with Google services. Eventually someone realized that their non-work accounts were banned as well. It wasn't until yesterday that someone made the connection. Anyone who had their accounts as a recovery option were also caught in the ban wave. One of the girls at work was bawling her effing eyes out since she couldn't access her email either. Anyways, we were all told to go home on Friday. I went home and looked this up myself, and I found out that this ban, sometimes on the entire account but always on the Google Payments account, happens when someone abuses their refund policy. It bans all the accounts associated with it, and remember how I said all our work accounts were connected? Yeah. So it's been 2 days now and we've been chatting over Skype, no one knows what happened and the IT guys are effing livid along with our supervisor and boss who are pissed that Google isn't helping us out. Their policy is to not share any information about what caused this, and they will not reverse these actions. The posts I've found online relating to this have had similar problems, not to this extent of course, but no one has been able to solve this type of policy breach since Google does not help them, even if it was by accident or due to some other cause. So yeah, that's that. I'm 99% sure that I am the culprit who caused this. I do not know why Google has a scorched earth policy when it comes to this kind of stuff, but I effed up and our boss is looking to migrate away from Google even though we just recently signed on not too long ago. I might make an update next week once this is, if at all, resolved.
I used to hate my husband, but now I think I'm in love with him. I know the title is exactly how it sounds. I, 27 female, and my husband, 27 male, have been married since we were 18 years old. At the age of 9, my family promised me away to our family friend's son. I have dreaded my birthdays ever since, 1 year closer to marriage and 1 year closer from being stripped of my freedom. While I was counting down the years, I met a guy. He made me happy, made me forget about ever having to worry at all. Eventually I turned 18, and I met my husband for the first time. I hated him. Looking at him made my blood boil, because I had already loved someone. We got married 2 days after meeting. After the wedding we didn't do anything. I remember sitting down on the honeymoon bed. He walked in and said, "I do not love you nor do you love me, so let's have an open relationship." I didn't argue, and told him okay. I was happy because that means I could see the guy I was so desperately in love with, but we had rules. We could never make love in the bedroom. We must always sleep in the same bed. No talking bad about each other to our partners, and some more basic things. So every year after that we put on the same act, a loving husband and wife at family gatherings. After we went off with our partners, me and my boyfriend were doing very good, while my husband never dated, only one night stands. A couple of years passed, and I thought everything was going okay until I found out my boyfriend had been cheating on me with a friend from high school. I went home and cried. My husband came into the bedroom where I was crying, asking me if I was all right. Even though I hated him, I told him everything and he held me there for what seemed like hours. After that me and my husband got closer. I took a break from dating while my husband still did one-night stands. We started keeping each other company. We did movie nights, game nights, and he took me dancing. Then he stopped going on one-night stands. I never asked. A couple nights ago when I was getting snacks for our movie, I walked in and saw him deleting all the dating apps he was on. I didn't mention it. I sat down with the snacks and he scooted closer until our shoulders were touching. I felt a little nervous and fluttery like a teenager on their first date. He got a work call late at night, and promised he'd be back as soon as he could. I fell asleep on the couch, and when I woke up, I was in the bed with my husband cuddling me. I was very flustered by this, and after that it has never been the same. This man that I hated so much, the man I cursed for years before I got married, turned out to the exact opposite of what I thought he was. It's like I have a school crush. I can't believe it's took all these years for me to realize that it is not his fault that I was promised away. He was also promised away to a stranger, so I could imagine how he feels. My husband started bringing me flowers and gifts. He tells me it's because he just thought it would be nice. We began staying up all night together and sleeping until almost noon. He bought me an engagement ring upgrade, and cuddles me to sleep when he used to be on the other side of the bed. I think I'm in love with him and don't know how to tell him.
What is a stand that you took with a customer that you will never apologize for? This sadly took place just over a year and a half ago. I say sadly because it truly pains me knowing that there are still people like this out there. I manage an auto repair center in Florida and we have 6 techs, me, and my assistant manager. One day a customer came in wanting to get a tire repaired. He seemed polite and friendly enough and we got his truck into the shop pretty quickly. I was at the front counter while one of our techs was removing the wheel from his truck and I heard the guest make the comment, "Damn, I was hoping that N wouldn't be touching my truck. I should have asked to have one of the white boys take a look at it." I swear my jaw dropped to the floor on that one. I casually walked out to the shop, told my tech to put the wheel back on the truck and pull it out. He looked at me a little confused, but did as he was told. I waited in the shop until after he pulled it out and brought me the keys. About that time the guest stepped out from the lobby and said, "Hey, you didn't fix my tire." I saw him just take off the wheel then put it right back on. "I'm going to call the corporate office and have your job." I looked at him as I handed him his keys and made sure I was loud enough for the entire shop and the rest of the guests in the lounge to hear when I told him quite bluntly, "Please do call them. And I will tell them what a racist SOB you were to my employee, so get the fuck and out of my shop." I could see the rest of the guests laughing inside the lounge as he cussed his way out to his truck with his wife. I did get a call later that day from corporate. After I explained what had happened, and had my assistant manager back me up, the matter was closed. I will never apologize for kicking out a customer for being racist towards my employees. I got fired for having intimate fantasies about my coworker. I am a postdoc doing research at a large hospital in the US. One of the researchers in my lab, Mary, happens to be a total cutie. She's the only female in our lab. I and 3 of my colleagues have a private group chat just for fun, and we frequently talk about Mary in our chat. We make all sorts of raunchy jokes about her, and we snoop on her public Facebook account and share pictures of her 20-something-year-old self dressed half naked or wearing swimsuits. Again, I need to mention that these pictures are all totally accessible. We also make jokes about which one of us gets to have intimacy with her first before her dreaded 40th birthday. We have masturbation circle sessions by using AI technology to put Mary's face in adult films videos. That poop is hot. The only messed up thing that happened in the group chat was when I once joked about taping Mary's mouth shut while I took her clothes off. All of this is done in our free time, in our private group chat, and we make sure that none of it ever interferes with our professional lives. Somehow, one way or another, Mary found out about our group chat and everything that goes on in it. So this past May, I and my 3 other colleagues were fired. One day in June, I got a message from Mary, saying that she wanted to speak to me. We met up for some coffee, and she looked shell-shocked and she could barely speak above a whisper. I got annoyed at how timid she was during our meeting, and more importantly, how she led to me being fired, and when I grilled her on this, she started crying. Am I the asshole, if it was literally all just a private group chat? What Mary didn't know wouldn't have hurt her. Of course, she knows about it all now.
What was the incident at your high school? It was around 2010, my freshman year, a fine, sunny spring day that started out like any other, and I was in first hour Spanish. Suddenly the fire alarm goes off, and we get up, leaving anything that's not in our pockets, and file out of the classroom calmly, like we'd been trained to do during fire drills from elementary school, except, this wasn't a drill, exactly. The first indication we had that something was wrong was when we went to turn the corner toward our side exit, and one of the science teachers, whom I was supposed to have next, waved us in the other direction, telling us to use a different door. We obeyed, and staff actually escorted us away from the grass outside the building, where we'd normally stand, to the football field in back of the school, where we could sit in the bleachers. Pretty soon, we all began trading what information we had, not much, in my case, and I found out there had been a chemical spill in my science teacher's room during an upperclassmen chemistry class. The chemical was highly reactive, so as soon as it spilled, she yelled immediately at her students to turn off their Bunsen burners that they were using in her lab. No one had any idea what the substance was or what had happened. The paramedics came as a precaution, checked on the class, and let all the students go but had the teacher go to the hospital to have some minor burns treated. By the time it became evident they weren't letting us back into the building that morning for anything, we broke away from our first hour classmates and interacted with our own friend groups. And they opened the track around the football field so we could walk laps if we got too bored. Finally, they had called in enough bus drivers and sent out a robocall to parents and guardians. So we walked, got picked up, or hopped on our temporarily assigned buses and went home, leaving most of what we had brought to school behind in our lockers and classrooms. A hazmat team came and cleaned up all traces of the spill, and the building opened for a bit in the afternoon for people to get their stuff if they wanted. But I lived far away so I had to wait until morning. A couple days after getting back to school I found out what happened. The substance was called yellow phosphorus, a powder that in the best case only causes severe diarrhea in any person that it comes in contact with, but often ends in a coma or death. Not to mention it reacts violently with other elements to cause fire and explosions. One of the substitute teachers accidentally knocked the small jar over while looking for something. It was actually illegal to keep in his school by some point before 2010 but had probably been there for decades and purchased by the previous teacher. We had science class a time or two in a roomy conference area after that, to make sure the classroom really was safe again. But after that, things went back to normal. The only thing was, for the next 4 graduations in my town, without fail, one of the students giving the remember when speech would bring up the day of the phosphorus spill. I'm sure by the time I graduated, our teacher, who had become my all-time favorite teacher by that point, breathed a sigh of relief. We were the last class to remember that, and she could finally put it behind her for good. I'll never forget it though.
My awful sister insists to change my child's name. I told her to keep her unsolicited and judgmental opinions to herself. She was livid. My wife and I welcomed our daughter into the world in November. We named her Kala after my wife's favorite flower and to honor my late grandmother, Lily. We announced the name once we had all the paperwork filled out. For us, it was just easier in case anyone decided to comment something negative. But my sister did have a problem with the name. She asked us why we chose a weird name and then told us a more classic sophisticated name would have been far better for our little one. My wife got upset so I told my sister to knock it off and we did not ask for her opinion. She laughed and said that she was only trying to help. I said very clearly we did not need or want her help with our daughter's name and it was already finalized, not up for change. But my sister really is very hard-headed. 2 days after our daughter was born, my sister sent my wife a list of names for girls. They were all very common names that have been used throughout the generations like Emily, Elizabeth, Hannah, and Eleanor. My wife replied that Kala's name was already official and again not up for change. That was not the last time she insisted on changing our baby's name. The next time we saw my sister she asked my wife why she wanted such an unusual and out there name, that nobody else would have. She told my wife that coming from foster care, you would think she would understand the importance of having a name that blends in and is classic. Names that are easy to say and spell. She also told her that she was opening our daughter up for a lifetime of being asked about her name. She left behind 2 baby name lists that day. My wife told me what she said and I was livid. I was not in the room when my sister said this so I sent my sister a text that we needed a break from her if that's how she was going to behave. She didn't reply right away and then over the following couple of weeks she sent many more name suggestions and when we did not reply she sent a very long, very detailed email. Telling us that we did not stop to think about the name Kala when we chose it. She said it might sound pretty to us but when you have a name almost nobody else has it causes problems. She also said that people want and need names that sound like names. Not words or plants that are being used as names now. She said she had no idea we were so trying hard that we would pick a nature name, as if that isn't one of the most idiotic things in the world. Then she mentioned my wife being a foster kid again and how she should know better about all people. I snapped and called up my sister to read her the riot act over the phone. I told her to keep her unsolicited and judgmental opinions to herself, and if she does not stop sending us baby name suggestions, then she will be permanently blocked. I told her I did not like her at all right now, and she is being a major a-hole and stooping so effing low that it's disgusting. I ended the call without letting her reply, and she blew up my phone after saying I had been so disrespectful and crossed more lines than her. Bride's mother attempted murder the groom at the wedding. Me and my friend worked for a catering company, and this is how we met our bartender and bouncer. This client we had that day was some rich old money. We started with the catering consultation. The wedding planner had changed 3 times already before they even came to visit us, and the appointment kept getting rescheduled. The day of the consultation came and they actually showed up, both the mothers with the bride and groom in tow. The wedding planner didn't show, but we kept the consultation going and would email all relevant paperwork later. The mothers of the bride and groom were the best of friends, and they were so excited they got to plan their kids' wedding together, and the future of family names was preserved. It was during this rant that my friend cut them off and spoke directly to the bride and groom. "Friend, I want to know what you two want. What cuisine do you like? What style of service would you like?" Bride's mother, BM, "They want a full-service buffet with carving stations, hors d'oeuvres and cocktail hour, and the cake will be from this bakery." Friend, "I'm sorry ma'am, I thought this consultation was for the bride and groom. If you want a consultation for your own wedding you will have to book one with my assistant." BM, "Excuse me, but I know more than these 2 kids do. I plan my wedding myself, you know." Friend, "How about this? You 2 ladies can sit with my assistant and give him all the details of what you are thinking, and I will give the bride and groom a private tasting." BM, "Fine, but I better see every piece of paper before it's signed." I take the ladies to another part of the office and listen to BM overtake everything, occasionally pointing out that a handsome young man such as myself shouldn't disappoint my mother when it's her time to plan my wedding. I just nod and smile and do my best to keep them busy while my friend gets the real story from the bride and groom. Back at the main consult, "Friend, so I can already tell there's some tension, so let me assure you that my company has nothing but the best intentions to make your wedding day as grand as you envision. You, the bride and groom, are our first priority." Groom said to the bride, "I told you they shouldn't have come. My mom caves to your mom's every whim, and we will get railroaded." Bride to groom, "I know, but I couldn't say no. She says it's her God-given right to plan this and I don't know what else to do." Friend, "Let me assure you that my assistant is merely hearing their suggestions. This is the real consult. But before we go further, if we cater your wedding, who will be signing and paying for our services?" Groom, "Us. I won't have a dime of their money be involved with our day." Friend smiles, "Perfect." They proceed with the rest of the consultation, going over menu options, service styles, table setups, timetables, and coordinating with the bakery. The last thing they went over was allergies. The groom has a very severe allergy to peanuts, which has apparently been a problem with BM. She believes he should just keep eating them and you'll get over it eventually. Except the groom's allergy is basically touch nut, full anaphylactic shock. We jot down a huge note that peanuts will not be anywhere near this wedding. Before the consult wraps up, my friend suggests putting passwords on the account. You never know who might try to change something, and the bride says no, but before they leave, the groom pulls my friend aside and says absolutely, but please don't give it to the bride. After their appointment ended, and the bride and groom left, and the mothers left, I went straight to the liquor room and my friend and I compared notes. As we suspected, the bride and groom wanted something almost entirely different than the mothers wanted, but since the bride and groom were paying and signing the contract, we shredded the mom's plans. The bride and groom opted for a plated dinner for 80, with an hour of hors d'oeuvres and cocktail. The cake would be delivered by the bakery and their staff would handle it. All was relatively quiet with this contract, until 3 weeks before the wedding when a 6'7", 260 pounds African-American man came into our office. He said he was here about his cousin's wedding and gave the proper password. My friend and I sat down with him and he introduced himself as the bride's cousin and he's worried about the wedding. Earlier that week, the groom was admitted to the hospital after going into anaphylactic shock. BM lied to the bride and groom and fed him a meal where everything was cooked with peanut oil. He witnessed the whole thing and when he confronted his aunt, BM, she said it's a mind over matter thing. He wanted us to be aware that bride mother and bride father were uninvited and banned from the wedding. It was the bride's orders. There was a lot of drama with the other vendors and general wedding planning, and this was the final straw. Cousin also wanted us to know that he is a cop, and he'll be providing security at the wedding. He brought 3 of his cop friends with him and left one in the kitchen to keep BM from sneaking in and poisoning any more food. The day of the wedding was mostly drama-free until the reception started when BM and boyfriend showed up with a gaggle of their friends and tried to force their way into the wedding. Cousin took no shit, my friend and I backed him up as best we could. And they were ejected from the reception. BM tried one final time as the reception ended and the wedding party filtered out. She sat in her car until the bride and groom were visible, then gunned her car at them. Cousin rushed them out of the way and BM smashed her car into the reception hall's front door. My friend and I witnessed the whole thing from the parking lot and rushed over to make sure the bride and groom were safe. We gave our statements to the police, and BM was arrested. The couple were shaken but not harmed. A few weeks after the wedding, cousin showed up to our office again. He thanked us for everything we did to help his cousin enjoy her day. He told us that the groom told him everything we did was distracting BM and setting up passwords. He was grateful for everything we did and gave us his card. Anytime we needed security he'd be sure to have our backs. Not long after this, he was shot in the line of duty and took a leave of absence from the police force for a bit to clear his head. Having previous experience as a bartender, we hired him on and he has been with us ever since. He still works as a cop but only at a desk in the precinct, and eventually he'd like to open his own bar. Bouncer has a heart of gold and the brawn of an ox, and we are glad to call him part of our team. BM went to jail and was cut out of the bride and groom's life, boyfriend divorced her. The happy couple just had a little bundle of joy a year ago, and are asking us to cater the baptism. GM was very apologetic for just going along with BM and was able to salvage the relationship with the couple. Oh, and my friend and I were sued for damages, slander and breaking contract, by BM. The case was laughed out of court.
What has an employee said that immediately made you fire them? My brother owned a small family stereo shop and I managed the books. The shop had been in the family for years and had grown through my dad initially starting with a little TV repair shop in 1970. It morphed with time to include car sound system installations and sales after my brother began working there. My brother actually won a few awards in Las Vegas at annual car shows for his custom automobile sound systems, so he had a bit of notoriety going on for a while. Many of our customers were multi-generational families we've known throughout the last 50 years. Dad had passed away and my brother, not quite the businessman Dad was, preferred the technical aspects, not the business end of the shop. I helped out doing the books when I retired from my federal government career. With the absence of Dad's expertise, it was very apparent the shop needed to hire a full-time floor salesperson. My brother hired Martin, a local guy who frequented the shop over the years and had quite an extensive grasp on how to configure sound systems for vehicles. All the guys knew Martin could be rather crass at times, but, hey, that's just when he's out drinking with the boys, right? Although he was probably a solid 4 on the handsome scale, Martin held a very high opinion of himself as some big heart stud that women couldn't resist. The guys all thought it was funny and endearing. About 2 weeks after Martin was hired, 2 longtime customers arrived at the shop. The absolutely beautiful wife came in the shop to browse while her husband stayed outside for a few minutes measuring his car interior for the expensive automotive speakers and sound system he anticipated purchasing from the shop. My brother had been working over the phone with this longtime customer for weeks trying to land this sale. The customer was finally ready to take the big plunge and have a custom sound system installed in his car. My brother was also hoping that this sale would trigger additional sales from this guy's large and influential family. So the pretty wife was mulling around at the sound system display wall in the showroom area killing time until the husband came in from outside. Martin immediately spotted this man's wife inside the store and had been hound dog admiring her from the cash register area for 5 minutes or so. Why, as a salesperson, he didn't approach her to offer assistance. We don't know. I personally think he was tongue-tied because this woman was very lovely. He did not connect that this woman's husband was still outside and would be entering the shop a few minutes later. When the husband finally came in, he walked directly up to the cash register to ask for my brother. For some crazy reason, we still don't understand, Martin decided he needed to share his admiration over the beautiful woman looking at the sound system's wall. He never connected that this woman was the man's wife. I was sitting at the service window located back behind the cashier area and you can hear everything that goes on in the cashier area from that vantage point. Martin pointed his finger to the woman and told the husband, "Damn, I'd love to tap that." The husband's mouth dropped open and he couldn't believe his ears. He asked Martin, "Excuse me, what?" Still clueless, Martin went on to announce to the husband, "I could go all night with her." I couldn't believe Martin had just said that to a customer. Frankly, I still don't know why the man did not smack Martin sideways to Sunday. Before I could get up and say anything, the husband stomped over to the sound wall, quickly snatched his wife by the arm and marched her out of the shop. They both got in their car and peeled out and away very angry. I looked at Martin and yelled at him, "You imbecile." That woman was his wife. Martin, continuing to be oblivious, responded, "Well, she was one hot lady." Hearing the yelling between me and Martin, my brother emerged from the installation garage area and asked what was going on. When I told him what had happened, my brother immediately fired Martin. He told Martin that he didn't hire him to ogle women on the sales floor. My brother called the husband on the phone and apologized within the hour. The guy told my brother that there was absolutely no way anyone in his family would ever buy anything from his business again. Because of Martin's mouth, my brother's small business lost a $5,000 car sound system installation complete with custom speaker boxes. My brother had already purchased the lumber. There really is no way to gauge how much future business from the rest of their family was lost on that day too. Yeah, I think this was definitely grounds for immediate dismissal.
Today I messed up convincing my deaf girlfriend to tie me up and blindfold me. Communication is important for any relationship, but it's especially important for us because my girlfriend is deaf. A few weeks ago we became intimately active. It was awkward at first, but eventually we got the hang of it. I suggested we do something special in bed before we go our separate ways during the holidays. I convinced her to tie me up and blindfold me when we make love again. Yesterday it happened. My girlfriend and I were in her bedroom. We made sure to lock the door, even though we were alone in the house. When I was done going down on her, she tied me up and blindfolded me. She enjoys the reverse cowgirl, so it didn't surprise me when I could feel her sitting on top of me like that. That position was our downfall because moments later I heard a knock on the door. It was her mom. I don't know if it's a deaf person thing or just my girlfriend, but her being vocal is loud as F. I've mentioned it to her many times, not as a criticism, and she always thinks I'm exaggerating. Her vocals made her mom lose her shite behind the door. I wiggled my hips like I was hula hooping to get my girlfriend to either pay attention to my face and read my lips or get off of me before her mom kicked the door down. I couldn't see anything and my girlfriend was becoming more enthusiastic and vocal due to my weird hip movements. The handcuffs were very challenging, but I managed to grab the box of wet wipes on the nightstand and toss it towards my girlfriend. She paused and lifted my blindfold. I mouthed, "Your mom is home and she can hear us." My girlfriend freed me and we got dressed as quickly and quietly as possible. Her mom stopped banging on the door when we stopped making a sound. My girlfriend and I were too scared to open the door, so we literally did nothing. Her mom decided to send her a message on her phone. The message said, "Is everything okay? Are you doing what I think you're doing?" My girlfriend proceeded to type what seemed like the script for the next Lord of the Rings movie, but she changed her mind mid-text and just replied with yes, followed by, "Please don't tell Dad." I had to do my walk of shame in the presence of the mom, who was unpacking grocery bags in the kitchen at the time. I've never seen a person pack products into a fridge with so much aggression. We were unable to look at each other. I awkwardly said hello and goodbye and left.
My husband is pretending he's married to my sister online. I'm leaving my husband because he's living another life online where my sister and her children are his family. I stayed up until the wee hours going through his computer and phone. My husband is a gamer and we have a gaming room. He hasn't changed his passwords and codes since we were dating, and while he was sleeping I was up snooping. Anyway, I was shocked by what I saw. Yes, my husband is in love, or at least has a crush on my sister. I'm not the only one he's complaining to about her weight gain. His best friend knows everything. He actually sends him pictures of my sister and openly admits that he uses these pictures to pleasure himself some nights. He complains that she's getting fatter. He's annoyed that she might be pregnant or that she's just going to ruin her beauty. One of the pictures he has sent to his best friend, whom he admits that he masturbates to, is from her Facebook, with my toddler nephew kissing her cheek. He has also taken pictures of her on our vacations. In bikini. Maybe hundreds. Some of them he has just cropped me out of. On his PC, he has group chats with his gaming friends. People that don't know him IRL. To those, he pretended that my sister and her children were his family. He proudly brags about having her. His profile picture is of her, her children, and him from a Christmas party. I'm shocked and disturbed and very confused. I never pressure him to do anything nice to me, but he tells me he loves me every day. He kisses and hugs me all the time. He never complains about me or my appearance, and although he never compliments my looks, he never complains about them either. My sister is very beautiful, and she's always been beautiful. I've learned that I could be other things and I'm fine with it. I have many great qualities and I always get compliments for them. That's why I never reacted to the lack of compliments from my husband. This is just how things have always been for me. I don't know if he loves me. Not 2 weeks ago, we had our 10th anniversary and he had surprised me with a weekend in Paris and a beautiful new engraved wedding band. What's going on? And what about posing her children as his? My husband and I are child-free and it was more his choice. He never wanted children. Ever. I didn't appreciate some of you trying to make my sister involved in this. She's not. She's an amazing sister and she would never do that to me. To make it even clearer, after sweeping all his devices, there's nothing from her to him that could remotely be interpreted as suspicious. They don't talk privately and the last text he has from her is when I turned 30 and they were planning a surprise party. Other than that, they communicate through our group chats. So please stop. About our weight. None of us is obese. I've always been on the curvy side. My sister is very slim. She has been fighting depression almost all her adult life because of something that happened to her in the past. And when she's depressed she can't eat. So when she gains weight, we're all delighted because it means she's happy and eating well. I'm divorcing my husband. I have yet to tell him what I've read and seen. I'm not ashamed that I have snooped around his private matters, and I'm not gonna wait and listen to excuses. This is beyond creepy and beyond salvation. It's so over.
My husband is pretending he's married to my sister online. Now I have told my mom and I've talked to my soon-to-be ex-husband. I told my mom everything as a first step. She is as baffled as I am, and she also doesn't know what to do about my sister given her past. She was intimately assaulted in college, which changed her as a person forever. I mentioned to her about maybe asking her therapist for help. She's going to contact her therapist tomorrow. Beside me, mom, dad, and my sister's therapist, nobody knows about her being roped. She wanted to keep it a secret from her husband. After we've talked to her, she could decide whether to tell brother-in-law or not. He's a good man and I'm sure he's going to be a great support should she decide to tell him. And then I will hopefully get her forgiveness. I'm so sorry to have introduced such a horrid man to her life. My soon-to-be ex-husband called when he saw that I'd been on his phone and PC. He asked me where I was and when I would be coming home. I told him, "Come on. You know I'm not coming back." He sounded so defeated. Told me he was disgusted with himself and that he was sorry and that he loved me. He just wasn't in love with me and hasn't been for 2 years. I told him that I never wanted to see him again, and most importantly I never wanted him to contact my sister. He said he would never do that and that he never would have acted on his fantasies. It's just his escape from reality. He hasn't been feeling well and this was his go-to comfort. He's posing as a richer man, more successful with a beautiful wife and beautiful children, and his friends admire him for it. And it gives him the rush he needs to cope with reality. Anyway, he begged me not to tell my sister, especially not her husband, and promised to never bother me again. I don't know what to feel. I'm numb. Maybe the hurt and sadness will come later. I'm more repulsed and disappointed right now. Only last weekend we were planning new renovations in New car. My mom is awesome. She told me not to rush the heartbreak because it will be coming eventually. I'm on survival mode right now. Tears will come when everything settles and divorce is a fact, not just a reaction. My wife's son is dying and she refuses to go see him. My wife Sarah has a son, Vicky, from her previous marriage. Because of the way my wife and I got together, there was a lot of strife in her divorce from her ex. There was a lot of confusion in Vicky's life and he was only 8 at the time. For a few years, my wife tried her best and tried everything to help him, but it was like the more she tried, the further away he got. It came to a head when he was 12 and she caught him trying to smoke and then he almost broke her jaw when she stopped him. After that, she stopped trying to force custody and just let him stay with his dad. When he was 14 and we had our son, she sent him a message that his brother was born and that even if he doesn't want to be around her, it doesn't mean he can't love his brother. He just responded back with "Go FCK yourself." She tried the same thing 3 years later when our daughter was born but got no response this time. Well, 2 days ago she got a call from her ex and he was crying because apparently Vicky is dying. He has cancer and they found it very, very late. Optimistically, he only has a month left and he's been begging to see her. So, I've told my wife to go and spend the month with him. She can work online for a month or take a leave or just quit if they don't understand. However, she's refused and she's used everything from work to needing to take care of our kids to even what if it's just a trick to hurt me more as excuses to not go. At the same time, she keeps crying, muttering about thinking she had more time, ignoring our kids, looking at old photo albums of her and Vicky. It came to a head this morning when I caught her having a breakdown in her car before going to work. I begged her to reconsider when I saw this happening and she called me a f-king a-hole for trying to push her into going. I know he's not my son and that I have no right over him, but not going is tearing Sarah apart. So Ada, when our kids were born it was not the only 2 times that my wife tried to reach out and ask if he was ready to see her. It's just when our son was born was the only time that he responded. She tried up until his graduation when even his father tried to get him to invite her. She sent him money, presents and everything for his birthdays. And as for when he struck her when he was 12, he did so with a hockey stick and then kicked her when she fell. She forgave him for that because she knew what he was going through and he's her child, but she decided to stop seeing him then because she didn't want her presence in his life to make him more violent. What if he hit another kid was her thought process. She took him to therapy, she tried so much but he was non-responsive then and now he's paying the price for that.
My ex told me I stank after doggy weird events followed. My F17 boyfriend at the time, now ex, had been dating for a little over 6 months and Halloween had been approaching. We had decided to dress up in costumes and go trick-or-treating and planned it out. I had dressed up as a cow and him, a clown. We did not have matching outfits, because we hadn't planned that ahead. Halloween day arrives and I get dressed and head on to school. The day goes by normalish with a few bumps. After school is over, I go home and get ready to go get some candy. My boyfriend comes over to my house and we finally head off to a neighborhood with spooky decorations all over the houses. We walked around the neighborhood holding hands, kissing, laughing etc. while my father and sister who had come with us walked on ahead. We got all of our desired candy and soon we're just driving, looking at the decor and listening to music. We soon head home and take a few pictures and head to my bedroom. This is when things get kind of weird. My boyfriend and I are lying on my bed when things escalate and soon we find ourselves looking to have a little bit of fun. I panic, because I hadn't been doing very well mentally and that had particularly affected my hygiene because I struggle with keeping up with my personal health. I excuse myself to the bathroom and clean myself up, making sure to wipe myself down with wipes and cleaning my breath up, you know? I eventually come back and we get it on. We try doggy style as we had never tried it at this point. I was anxious but the intimacy was great, for me. He came and soon he was looking kind of nervous, like he had something he needed to say. I ask and he tells me and I quote, "Your SS stinks." And I just sat there in disbelief. I got a little upset but not causing a scene and just replied with a simple "oh." I suddenly get up to remove my makeup because I am frankly exhausted, embarrassed, and upset. While removing my makeup, I was silent and my boyfriend could tell. He asked what was wrong and I simply told him that nothing had been wrong. I left to go get some water for us because it had been a common thing to do after intimacy, and when I arrived back in my room he was visibly upset. He was crying. I set down the glass of water and went up to him asking what was wrong, holding him. He was just crying and crying. I was panicking and don't really remember most of what he was saying because I've shut this memory out a bit. I comforted him and I realized he was probably upset because I was upset because of what he had said but I didn't bring it up because of embarrassment. We sat there for about 30 minutes while he was sobbing and I sat there with him until he had to head home. When he left he was getting picked up by his parents. He had calmed down but not enough. His parents don't react well when their kids show visible emotion like this and so I was worried. He left and I was left a little confused. I head to my room and then a few minutes later I got a call from boyfriend. I answer wondering what's he calling about. He responds and he is crying and asking if he can head back to my house and I say yes and I ask what is going on. He tells me his parents and him got in an argument and they left him by a convenience store close by my house and they were threatening to send him to a mental hospital. He continues to talk but then has to hang up. At this point, I do not know what is going on. I wait for him to call back and regularly check his location. We shared each other's locations, and eventually go to bed. He texts me the next day telling me he's being sent to a mental hospital for a week. That next week, it ended up being 9 days, of my life was kind of depressing, like if you looked at me you would have said that girl does not have it together. I texted his phone almost every day then wrote journals for him, which he never saw. He came back and he talked about his visit there regularly. Time went on and so many things went on between me and him, and I've only mentioned the SS thing to him once over text. It was awkwardly laughed over. He and I occasionally talk but not really friends anymore. I told my neighbor that I caught her husband and her best friend cheating on her. And he has the nerve to take all of his things and drumroll go live next door. I've been living in this neighborhood my whole childhood. I know all my neighbors, especially the ones that live in front of my house. I babysit their children. They're really sweet and lovely. The couple K is kinda mean but I'm used to it. The people in here are very stuck up. In the house next to that one, lives a woman, her name is Hay, and her 2 kids who are the same age as the other children, and I've had to babysit them a few times too. They're all best friends. This family used to have a husband but she divorced him a few years ago, so it's now just her and the kids. A few houses from mine leave Kay's parents. I can see all 3 houses from mine. A little bit more than a month ago I noticed Ted and Hay talking, which is not unusual, but the way they behaved was flirty. I swear I'm not a nosy person, I can just conveniently see everything. I didn't think much of it though. A few weeks later Kay and her children went to visit family in the north, while Ted stayed here since he is working. Since then, I've seen Hay and Ted go out biking, going to dinner, walking, and talking, but what's suspicious is that they do that whenever Kay's parents are out. I've also seen Ted climb up the fence separating his house from Hay's at night, instead of walking to her front porch. That's when I got concerned. I talked with my parents and they agreed on how suspicious everything was. Yesterday was the confirmation. I was walking in right when I passed Hay's house, they were inside kissing and all that stuff. My blood rushed. I felt so bad for Kay, the kids, everything. I've had this sense of dread since then, but I'm so conflicted. Kay probably won't ever find out if they get away with it, and I fear I might ruin their marriage if I let her know. After I spent about a week trying to figure out if I should tell my neighbor, I managed to take a few pics of her husband and the other woman. Turns out, I didn't even need to tell her. Kay was back after the week, and asked me to take care of the kids while she and her husband went out for the night. After they came back she took me aside to talk about the kids. She asked me if I had seen something off about her husband while she was gone, because she suspected he was cheating on her but couldn't find any proof, and no one would tell her anything and all that stuff. She said she'd appreciate it if I told her the truth. And of course, she didn't even have to finish talking. I whipped out my phone, showed her some pictures, told her about the shady stuff, and that was it. She thanked me and then I went home. Long story short, I spent the whole rest of the week with the kids. She straight up kicked his SS out. She gave him some choice words before, of course, outside her house, where all the other neighbors could see. And this hole has the nerve to take all of his things and drumroll go live next door with a neighbor. They didn't last long in that house. I took care of the kids the rest of the summer, and now they're just waiting for the separation time to get a divorce.
Why did you run away from home? When I was 15 years old, I ran away from home because I was pissed off at my parents for a reason I can't remember. I didn't have much money, so I decided to hop onto the SkyTrain, public transport train in British Columbia, and ride it as far as it would go. I reached the end of the line in less than an hour and decided I wanted to ride it all the way back again while trying to formulate some kind of plan of how I wanted to live the rest of my life without my parents or anyone. At the last stop, or the first stop depending on your perspective of it, a girl came on and sat in the row right behind me. I didn't pay much attention to her at first, as I was busy writing my life plan on a napkin. It was a few minutes later that she got up and sat next to me, curious as to what I was writing. I told her the story, and after a few laughs, we began talking about everything and anything. Her name was Amanda, 17 years old and absolutely wonderful. She told me she was getting off at the last stop, which was also the first stop, depending on how you look at it. It was also the stop I had gotten on originally, and I told her we would ride to it together. The train ride took less than an hour, and what a wonderful hour indeed. When the last stop did come, we both knew we probably wouldn't see each other ever again. This was before the days of cell phones, and I was a shy little kid afraid to make moves. As we got to the end of the sidewalk, which split in 2 different directions, she went right and I went left. Before saying goodbye, she turned to me and asked me a question that has become a wonderful part of my life. She asked me, "Tell me something you have done, or want to do, that you think I should do. It can be anything, as challenging as you want it to be, or as easy, as long as you give me the rest of my life to complete it. I promise I will do it." I was confused as to why, but I thought about it, and told her, "Sing an a cappella song in a room full of strangers." She said perfect and asked me if I would like a challenge as well. I told her I did, and she told me, "Read, from start to finish, Ulysses by James Joyce." I had never heard of it at the time, but I agreed, and we said our goodbyes. I have an awful memory, and can't remember most conversations I have with most people, but I remember all of that clearly. You know why? Because of the challenge she gave me. In the 12 years that have passed since, I have tried to read that book in over 150 different sittings. Every time I open my copy of the 780-page monster of a book, I always think of her, and I always think of that day. I've never been sure if it was her intent or not, but she left her lasting memory on me with that challenge. I soon after learned what she did was a completely wonderful and amazing thing for me, so I decided to keep it going. I've met a lot of strangers in my life, some that have become friends, and some, due to living in different time zones and whatnot, didn't. I don't want to just have experiences and then let them go. I want to remember these meetings and embrace the fact that they happen. So whenever I leave someone who has left an amazing impact on my life, I always make sure to add them to my Ulysses bucket list. I ask them to give me a challenge, as difficult or as easy as they want it to be, and regardless of the fact that they have done it or not, simply something their heart has wanted to do. Some have been easy and fun. I met a man in India 9 years ago who told me to, for a week or a month, cook and buy twice as much food as I intend on eating and give the other half to a stranger in need. I completed that mission 8 years ago, and thought about that man and the time we it all the way through. I met a girl on a cruise 6 years ago who told me to jump into a body of water on a slightly cold day, without touching or feeling the temperature of the water first. I did that the very same year. I met a couple at an outdoor music festival a few years ago that told me to wear the most bizarre outfit imaginable and walk through a public place, completely oblivious to the fact that you aren't looking normal. I did that task the very next day, at the same festival. Some have been difficult, to say the least. 3 guys I met in Amsterdam and smoked all night with told me to go to a mall and give 10 strangers 10 presents. That one took a lot of courage, but I did it a year or so after I met them. It was nerve-wracking, but at the same time exhilarating, leaving my comfort zone. A girl I met on a plane told me to skydive. I'm still in the process of getting that done. A couple I met in Cali on the beach told me to tell the 5 people I hated the most that I love them and respect them. That one was very difficult because of my stubbornness, but I've come close to completing that list many times. Still in the process. 2 more people to go. Some things have had an everlasting impact on my daily life. I met a girl at a music festival who told me that whenever I get mad at someone, walk away, sing my happy song in my head for 5 minutes, go back to the person I'm mad at with a calm heart and mind and work things out. I've made this my way of life. I once met a man at a gym in a hotel I was staying at that told me whenever your body and brain tells you that you are exhausted, use your heart instead and push out 2 more reps. I've made this my motto when working out or working on any kind of extenuating exercise in which my body demands me to quit. I also use it while working on anything, and while studying. One of the best pieces of advice I've ever received. There are many others that each brought joy to my life. There are still many tasks I have yet to accomplish, and every time I think of these tasks I think of the people that gave them to me. It amazes me how well I remember all these people, while I can't remember so many aspects of even yesterday. These experiences, not only do I take from them a mission or a challenge, I also take from them a memory of them that never fails to appear inside of my mind. I opened my Ulysses book for probably the 300th time yesterday, and read a few pages, which prompted me to share this story with you today. I'm in the final 30 pages of the book, also known as the most dreaded of the read. In the last 40 pages or so, James Joyce doesn't use a single punctuation mark, no periods, no commas, no nothing. A straight 50-page run-on sentence. I never saw Amanda after that day, nor do I know if she ever did get a chance to sing a song to a room full of strangers. But what I do know is that she gave me a gift that has never once stopped giving. So wherever you may be, thank you for giving me the Ulysses bucket list. And I swear I'll finish it one day. My life advice? Simple, create your own Ulysses bucket list. Update. My husband of 5 years asked to sleep with me and my best friend and she agreed. They both agreed to arrange a talk with me this morning and I'm not even that shocked, but I still can't stop crying. When I arrived they were sitting so close to each other it genuinely made me feel so sick. They didn't seem upset at all. They were just talking like normal and even smiling, which is so gross to me seeing as they both know how upset I am right now. When I sat down I flat out asked them if they had been seeing each other behind my back and everything I've been suspecting these past 3 days was confirmed. They had been sleeping with each other. I am so heartbroken right now. I don't think I can carry this child. These past few days have felt so unreal and I'm a wreck. I know that it's early to decide this, but I do think terminating the pregnancy is the correct decision for me. I also asked him why he decided to tell me now and not earlier or when I wasn't carrying his child, and he literally just shrugged and shook his head and then said I don't know. As if that was a good enough answer. Mia was mostly quiet the whole time, but I don't think she feels the slightest bit of guilt. To everyone saying divorce, that is most likely what will happen. I'm terrified as I've known him for most of my adult life and he is the only man I've ever been with. He is in control of our bills, our rent and overall finances. I literally have no idea what I'm doing. Time is literally a blur right now. I'm receiving messages about my termination considerations and it's getting to me even though I know I can't have this child. My mother-in-law has also started spamming me too. I blocked my husband's number and I did the same with Mia. His mother won't stop messaging me. I blocked her number but she then went out of her way to message me on Instagram and Facebook. She keeps saying I should have just slept with them too and everyone would have been happy. I'm dealing with so much depression and anxiety right now and I'm also struggling with the fact that terminating this child is the best thing for it. What was a loophole that you found and exploited the hell out of? Going anonymous here so I don't lose my degree. I'm currently in college at a large university in the US. My minor has simple requirements. Pass at least 4 of 10 offered classes. As it turns out, 4 of the 10 classes are taught by the same professor. He teaches 2 in the fall and 2 in the spring. By chance, I took him once. I've taken him 3 more times and have earned my minor, getting A's in every single class. And I guarantee you I couldn't pass a basic class with any other professor. This professor gives weekly quizzes and monthly tests in person, but via the computer. We sign into a special software that doesn't allow us to search the internet and take the test with him there. Everything was multiple choice. But here's where it gets interesting. Many of his questions had more than one answer. So, he set the test so you could check as many answers as you want. For example, we could select both A and B because the answer could be both. But the test never counted how many answers we selected, and it only made sure you checked the right box, not if you checked a wrong box too.
So if the answer was A and B, and I checked A, B, and C, it would count as right.
So what did I do?
I checked A, B, C, D, and E for almost every single question.
The software would see that I checked the right answer, because I checked every answer, and marked the question right. Sometimes, to maintain realism, I'd purposefully check only one box for a few questions to get them wrong. My average score stood between 95 to 100% the entire semester, and quizzes and tests made up 75% of his grading, the other 25% being just menial homework. These classes boosted my GPA noticeably, and now I have a particularly impressive minor to put on my resume.
My best friend of 11 years kissed me while we went for a walk on the beach and now my life is complete. I, 18M, and my friend, 19F, went for a walk on the beach together, This happened today and I'm still smiling with so much joy and happiness. I never thought this day would come. Around 6 p.m., I asked her out to go for a walk on the beach and she said yes. So she came to pick me up and we drove to the beach that also had an ice cream place across the street. We got to the beach in about 5 minutes, which is a very short drive. We saw that there were only 3 other people on the beach. We took our shoes off and got our feet wet a bit and we took pictures of the sunset. They were breathtaking. After about 15 minutes of walking we stopped. She then told me how she felt, and boy do I tell you when she told me her feelings, I was about to cry. Not cry sadness, but joy. I don't think anyone that I knew ever would actually say to me, "I love you so much. You are my whole heart, my strength, my purpose." She then told me to get closer. She wrapped her arms around me and kissed me on the lips. I felt like yelling at the top of my lungs in joy as if I just accomplished the unthinkable. After 11 years, on this day, me and my friend are now a couple. She giggled a bit, which was cute, and flashed the gorgeous smile. We then ended up making out for another 10 seconds before we got some pics together. We even got a pic of her kissing me under the sunset. This is a moment I will never forget. This has got to be the best moment of my life and I'm extremely thankful and happy this girl came into my life in 2011. Every story can have a happy ending and inspire some people to do what's best for them. Whether it's confessing your feelings or even asking someone out, just go for it. Either way, at the end of the day you got it off your chest. Thanks for reading this again and I hope everyone that reads this finds love and happiness in their life.
I just found out my girlfriend is deaf. Holy crap, that's how I would describe my whole experience. I'm back in my house now and I'm still processing everything that happened. I texted her I was outside and my hands were shaking. I had no idea what to do. I asked her if she can lip read and she said very little. When she opened the door her eyes were already wet and when she saw me she broke down crying. And I started crying as well. I stopped thinking and just hugged her. I started speaking soothing words until I realized it was useless. After we both calmed down we went to her room and started typing in our cell phones to talk to each other. I told her that I loved her regardless of her condition and I would always want to be with her, hearing or not. Although we met online, I really felt a connection to her, so I wasn't going to ruin it over something as small as this. I do have a lot of learning to do now too. At the beginning it was kinda awkward, but after a while it was pretty chill. We cuddled a lot, watched a lot of movies and kissed a lot. It was a really beautiful day. There were some mess ups from my side. Out of the blue I'd start speaking to her until I saw her confused face. I called her by her name when I was searching from her and tried to show her funny TikToks. The funny part being the audio. Yeah, I'm stupid, I know. But overall it was an amazing day. She is more perfect than I could ever imagine. I can't wait to see her again. Thank you for all the words of support in the other post. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for the kind words. When I posted it, never expected to get so many comments. I'm grateful for all your suggestions and tips, but maybe it's important to mention that we speak Spanish. And as far as I understand, ASL is not the same in Spanish, so I have a lot of work to do. Have a great night. I ended an elderly man's life in front of his wife and his entire family. One night when I was in college I was driving to get some liquor for a party my fraternity was supposed to throw the following night. I was taking a street I was very familiar with to get back to my house. It was dark but the street was lit with street lamps. I remember that I looked at my radio for a second, just a second, not very long at all. But when I looked back up to the road there was a man crossing. I didn't have any time to react. By the time I saw him he had already hit the hood of my car and folded like origami off the side. I remember screaming and hitting the brakes, and the wash of horror of what had just happened. I'll admit I had thought about speeding away, but I pulled over to the side and ran out of my car to check on this guy. When I got to him his family was standing outside the restaurant he was leaving and they were all screaming and crying. He is lying on the side of the road with blood coming out his nose and mouth. 2 other men were standing with him trying to see if he was alright and calling 911. All I could say was I didn't see him. I was frantic by the time it had said and what I had done. I sat on the curb across from the family and listened to their crying in agony while we waited for the paramedics to arrive. I sat there and sobbed while paramedics took him away in an ambulance. I don't believe I've ever cried so hard and for so long. The worst part about all of it and what still hurts me today was that his wife came over to me while I was distraught on that curb, sat next to me, placed her hand on my shoulder and said I was married to him for almost 50 years. We had a good life. Then she hugged me and said that she forgave me. After everything was said and done it was ruled that it was an accident. I wasn't charged with anything and I had one of my friends pick me up from the police station. I went down a dark path the years after that. I drank heavily, dropped out of college in my senior year, and had to move back in with my mother and father because I couldn't hold on to a job. Even tried to end myself with pills. It was a hard road to recovery, which I feel I'm not fully recovered from, nor do I feel I ever will be the same. But eventually I got my life back in order. I joined the Navy and saw a bit of the world, and now I'm on track to go back to college and hopefully finish what I started there. It took almost a decade, but I finally started to feel almost whole again. I'm back to hanging out with my friends and going out. So maybe there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Why don't you talk to your once best friend anymore? About half a year before us falling out her boyfriend broke up with her. She was super upset and for some reason completely cut me out of her life. We spent the everyday together and at that point we were friends for 7 years, but I just continued being the supportive friend and messaged her once in a while to see if she was doing alright. She would ignore me. This went on for about 4 months. Out of the blue one day in September she messages me and asks to meet up for lunch. I'm ecstatic because I missed her and we meet up that afternoon. It was good, and she told me she was seeing a therapist, and we just let the elephant in the room sit in the corner. We didn't discuss her reasons for cutting me out. Then at the end of the conversation, she says that her and her ex got back together. My response was, okay, is that really good for you? I honestly like the guy and still hang out with him once in a while now, but he was not a very good boyfriend to her. He manipulated her, laid hands on her multiple times, made her and her parents' relationships rocky at best, and then cheated on her with 3 different girls all at the same time. However, he claimed he was a changed man and she fell for it. Eventually around October he breaks up with her again, claiming he has found someone better. His place is a few blocks from mine, so she comes over and is absolutely hysterical. I put her in mine and my boyfriend's bed and just hold her for a little and try to calm her down. It was about 11 p.m. and I had classes the next day, but my boyfriend at the time slept on the couch so that she and I could be alone. After an hour or two I got up and went to go get her some water or whatever she asked for. I come back to her swallowing a bunch of pills she had in her bag in a Ziploc bag which was unmarked. I immediately put my fingers in her mouth to try to make her throw up, scream at my boyfriend to call an ambulance, and she's completely melancholic and won't tell me what she swallowed. Ambulance came, she went to the hospital, they admitted her to a psych ward for monitoring, and when she was released she seemed broken. Would not eat, would not drink, smoked a lot. And for a few months she was like a puppy and followed me everywhere. I didn't mind and invited her to Thanksgiving, and even preemptively to Christmas with my family. At the end of November, another friend of mine passed away and I'm having a tough time. She refuses to lend an ear and let me cope, claiming her problems are much worse than mine. Fast forward another week. And I get dropped once again. No communication, nothing. It's radio silence from her as soon as I needed a friend to support me instead of everyone else supporting her. A few months later she messages me and says she needs to talk. I think, okay, one last failed ditch attempt. Go to Starbucks near my place, order drinks and sit down. Her first words to me are, "You're the worst friend I've ever had. You're a degenerate and a waste of space, and I hate you for not letting me pass like I wanted. Don't you see, I lost him, he was my everything." I let her yell at me for about 10 minutes, then I'd had enough at this point. I said, when things in your life are going right, when you have a boyfriend, a husband, a family, you'll remember me and how bad of a friend I was for caring about you and loving you. She responded with, "You're just dumb." I dumped my drink on her, iced tea lemonade, which is by far the most dramatic, rude, and actual mean thing I've ever done, and I walked out, blocked her, and have not spoke to her ever since. It's been 4 years, and the mutual friends we had still tell me she asks about me. My awful girlfriend changed completely after inheriting her father's fortune and became selfish. She broke up with me and made my whole life crumble. My girlfriend's parents are divorced and her father passed away at the end of last year. She was his only child, so she inherited most of his assets, which was a lot, because her father was a wealthy man, at least to my standards. The problem started after she took care of all the formalities regarding the inheritance. We moved in together, which made me happy because we've been together for 4 years already. At first I thought that the apartment we've moved in was the only one she inherited, because we didn't speak much about her father's fortune, but it turned out that it was just one of the 5 apartments that she inherited. I asked her why she would withhold this information from me and she told me that she hadn't thought that this would be so important and she decided to either sell or rent the rest of the apartments. It made me feel kind of uneasy because if we are together for so long and we've both decided to move in together, then shouldn't we both discuss and choose which apartment to move into? She apologized, so I left it at that. But it didn't end here. I later learned that she also inherited a house that she has sold without consulting me. She argued that she wanted to give the money to her mom, so she could live comfortably, but I don't believe that anyone would just sell a freaking house to give money to someone else. That's pure BS. Another thing that is making me confused is how she just doesn't want to share. Her father left a car and lots of electronics, like a MacBook, and she just claimed it, without even asking if I need a new laptop or something. I'm not expecting her to not use her inheritance, but we've been together for 4 years, she knows that I was thinking about buying a new laptop. It would be nice if she at least asked. I also thought that she would at least let me drive the new car, but she's just started to brag about how it's her first car. She's not even driving it, because she prefers to take a bus or walk to most places. She also wants to split bills evenly, even though I know she has a lot more money now and I'm pretty sure she wouldn't even need my share of payment. I asked her about it and she actually got kind of mad at me this time. Told me that we are not married or anything and I shouldn't just expect her to give her whole inheritance to me, so yeah, just usual over-emotional woman BS, because that's not what I asked for at all. I told her that I just feel left out because she's deciding what to do with the apartments herself and then she's just claiming the car and the MacBook, while I'm here too. She just doesn't want to understand. She actually argued that this is exactly why she never told me about her father's wealth. As if I was some gold digger or something. How to make her realize that her selfishness may break us apart. I feel like it's harder and harder for me to commit, when I know that there are people out there, who would be way more caring in a relationship than her. I was thinking about suggesting a couple therapy, because I love her and don't want to break up, but she has to realize that she's not alone and I should be involved in the decisions she's making. Update: we started couple therapy a few months ago. The first few meetings went well, but then he started to be weirdly invested in our relationship. After those first few meetings he suggested that we both need separate therapy, with different specialists, to work on ourselves and not just focus on our relationship. I refused, as I see no reason to go into therapy myself and we went just for couple counseling anyway. But as I said, He grew overly interested, especially in my girlfriend's well-being, as he put it, and brought up individual therapy each time we went. I wanted to change our therapist, but my girlfriend was really against the idea, to the point of being mad at me for even suggesting it, which I also found weird. But I put my foot down and said that we need to change our therapist. She broke up with me and kicked me out of the apartment, so I moved back to my parents' place, but they are not rich and I decided to drop out of uni to work full-time. My whole life crumbled because of my ex's selfishness. What's your most heartwarming? The universe is on my side story. Life is full of surprises, some unexpected, some serendipitous. But there was one surprise in my life that was so heartwarming, so serendipitous, that it felt like the universe was on my side. I was in my early 30s, single and longing for companionship. I had been through a series of failed relationships, and I was starting to lose hope. I was beginning to believe that I was destined to be alone. One day, as I was walking my dog in the park, I saw a woman struggling to control her energetic puppy. Being a dog lover, I decided to help her. We started talking, and I was instantly drawn to her warmth and kindness. We started meeting regularly in the park, our dogs becoming the best of friends. As we spent more time together, I realized that I was falling for her. She was everything I had been looking for, a kindred spirit who understood me and accepted me for who I was. One day, I decided to tell her how I felt. I was nervous, afraid of ruining our friendship. But to my surprise, she confessed that she had been feeling the same way. We decided to give our relationship a chance, and it was the best decision we ever made. That serendipitous encounter in the park was a turning point in my life. It was a heartwarming reminder that the universe works in mysterious ways, that love can find us when we least expect it. It was a moment that restored my faith in love, a moment that made me believe that the universe was indeed on my side. That encounter was more than just a chance meeting. It was a story of love and serendipity, a story that warmed my heart and filled my life with joy. It was a moment that I will always cherish, a moment that was as heartwarming and as beautiful as the love that blossomed from it. Would I be the jerk if I break up with my boyfriend because of his hygiene? I, 24, am too old for this. I am not a clean freak either. I met my boyfriend 6 months ago. He was a little hippie, which I didn't mind. So, a little about him. He is a hardcore vegan. He is someone you can call an environmentalist. He thinks a lot about the environment. He only buys clothes from shops that are locally owned. He is big on recycling things. He doesn't use toothpaste but a meswak. He is also anti-shave, though he trims his beard. So ever since I was with him, I always had this hunch that he is not washing properly. We do not live together. So, I am not at his house more often. He always smells like spices, so I had no idea his hygiene was so bad until now. I mean, I noticed it. He never shaved down there. I always had a funky smell from his junk. He doesn't have cleaning supplies in his house. I asked about it and he said he doesn't use chemicals that will harm the environment. He uses vinegar and lemon to clean stuff. It was odd, but I get it. I let it slide, though it should have been my first red flag. Now, I have come to the last straw. Last night when I was in his place, I was using the bathroom. After I was done, I didn't see toilet paper. This is one thing I used to be glad that he kept in his house. Thought I am someone who prefers a bidet. I asked him to give me some toilet paper because he ran out. He told me he threw away all the toilet rolls because they clog the draining system and go to the ocean, which then causes toxicity in fishes, plus it wastes money to make toilet papers. I asked him then what does he uses to wipe himself. He told me he has switched to reusable toilet paper a month ago. He just uses these and throws them in the washing machine. I wanted to vomit there. I am thinking about ending things because I cannot deal with this thing my entire life. Am I wrong?
When was the hardest you have cried? In 2009, I was 26 years old and had a 4-year-old son, and 2-year-old and 1-year-old little girls. My son had been sick for weeks. I'd taken him to the pediatrician every week for 4 weeks, and taken him to the ER once when he collapsed in pain and was screaming and begging me to make it stop. I was told repeatedly he had an upper respiratory, and the pain was just because he was constipated too. When he collapsed a second time, I took him back to the ER again and told them I wasn't leaving until they figured out what was happening. This time we had a different doctor, and as soon as she did her initial assessment, I could see on her face that she was concerned. She immediately got the doctor supervising the ER that day to come check him out as well, and I saw them making eye contact with each other throughout, and I knew they were very worried, although they didn't tell us what they suspected yet. They ordered blood work, and only an hour or so after entering the ER, they both came back and had someone come take my son to another room to color while we spoke. They asked me to sit down, and as soon as they started talking about his blood counts, I started to feel like I was gonna faint. When they actually said the word leukemia, I started screaming and sobbing. I had forced my husband to come. He thought I was being paranoid and the previous doctors were right and it was just a virus, and I remember gripping his shirt as I screamed and wept. I had no experience with cancer, and as far as I knew, my 4-year-old little boy could be facing a death sentence. I had always seen the St. Jude ads, and listened to the stories on the annual telethon on the radio, and used to cry hearing the parents talk about losing their children. I remember pulling over and praying that my children never be that sick as I cried for those kids. My baby going through that was my worst fear, and it was suddenly coming true. I cried a lot during his treatment, never in front of him, but that first evening was shattering for me. And a side note, cancer is not a death sentence. That was just what my inexperience and fear told me at the time. My precious little boy is now a healthy 12-year-old who's about to pass my height. He had a difficult 3 years, but he is now healthy and cancer-free.
Today I'll have to tell my son his new girlfriend's child might be mine. There was no cheating involved whatsoever. I'd never do that to my own son. He's only been seeing her for about 4 months from what he's told me, but she and I dated 2 years ago. But it ended because I was going to be traveling out of work for months. We just lost contact. She has a 1.5-year-old son that is very likely my child. My son told me the father isn't involved but hasn't given him any other details other than it's just her raising the kid. I was the one to connected the dots as soon as I realized it was her. You can't imagine how unbelievably awkward the first time meeting was. Thankfully it was with other family members around, but she was just as freaked out as I was. This can't be kept a secret though. If this is my child, I need to know. And as much as it pains me to put my son in this messed up position, he needs to know too. He's coming over later on so we could talk. I'm beyond nervous. I really don't even know where to start explaining something like this to him.
My bratty niece ruined my $20,000 code and was not apologetic at all. So her parents paid me back by selling her car and they grounded her for a year. I have a niece, 16F, and she is my sister's only child. 2 years ago I married a very wealthy man, and because of the pandemic, last Christmas was my first with my in-laws. My mother-in-law gifted me a coat that is worth more than $20,000. I didn't know how much it was. I knew it was expensive, but I thought maybe $3,000 at most. I was visiting my sister last January when my niece saw it. She Googled the brand and showed me how much it really was, and I won't lie, I didn't wear it after that because I was afraid of ruining it. Last week, I wore it while visiting my sister, and while I was putting it back on to leave, I felt something go splat on my back, and then my niece started cackling and the smell of paint hit me. I was so pissed off when she was not apologetic at all. Her mom screamed at her and said she was grounded, then she said she would pay for the dry cleaning. While I was in my car, still in shock, I got an alert that my niece posted a reel. It was of her doing a prank on me, and she said, "I'm going to hit my aunt's $20,000 coat with a paint-filled balloon to see how she reacts." I saved it on my phone, sent it to her mom, and told her that a week's grounding was not enough. She did not reply, but I saw that my niece took it down. It got less than 5 views by then. The next day I found out my code could not be saved, so I called my sister and told her that her daughter had to pay it back. Well, we got into an argument and she said that they would not be paying for it, and if I wanted a new one, I should get my husband to buy it for me. I think that they should pay for it. They can afford to. In my opinion, they should sell my niece's car and pay me back my money. We did not reach an agreement, so I told her that I would be suing and reminded her that I have video evidence that her daughter A did it on purpose for online clout, and B knew exactly how expensive it was. When my husband got home, I told him what happened and showed him the video. He asked if I spoke with my brother-in-law, and I said no, all my conversations were with my sister. He said that he will take care of it. Now, a disclaimer, I understand nothing when it comes to insurance claims, and this is what my husband told me. My husband talked with my brother-in-law, told him exactly what happened, and showed him the prank video. Then he told him that the coat was insured, we would be filing a claim and submitting the video, and we might have to file charges for the claim. He assured him that we would be dropping the charges and we do not want to send niece to jail. Then he told him that one of two things might happen: after our insurance pays us, they will come after them. If their insurance pays, their premium will skyrocket. If it doesn't, they might sue them and might get a lien on their house. My brother-in-law asked if there was a way he could pay us without involving insurance. My husband told him that that was what we wanted at first, but that my sister insisted that they would not be paying us back. Apparently, my brother-in-law was not in the know, and he was very pissed off at what my niece did and my sister's response. So they came to this solution: my niece's car will be sold, and if it doesn't fetch the whole compensation money, she will have to get a job and pay me the whole check until it is paid off. Also, she is grounded for the rest of the school year. How did you get back at someone who lied to you? I'm a young filmmaker who, like many of my kind, is incredibly proud of their college film projects. I'm especially and shamelessly fond of my thesis film. The execution was on point thanks to the many talented people working on the project, including my ex-boyfriend's band, which gave me music for the film. Let's call my ex John Mancini. John told me he was from Italy, and it's important to note that John spoke often about being Italian, telling stories, like the one about his traumatic birth and baptism in Tuscany, that placed him there for the first few years of his life. The relationship was actually quite abusive in many forms, but I was very in love with him and quite proud to put his band's name in the credits on our original poster. Music by his band. John asked that I use his stage name Robert Mancini in the credits on IMDb. I didn't find this odd, as having a screen name is common, and he had done music for another film I found on IMDb and asked to be credited in the same way. Shortly after the film premiered, and 1 month after I signed a year lease on a 2-bedroom apartment for us, he broke up with me. Though it was the safest outcome for me, I was heartbroken, to say the least. Here I was, having to process us sharing a full cast and crew page on IMDb. On top of everything I went through in the relationship while missing him, remembering he scored another film, I decided to Google his credits using his screen name, Robert Mancini. My top hit is a mugshot from several years ago. It's undeniably him, with his birth name, Robert Garcia, not John Mancini, his birth country, Mexico, not Italy, a list of aliases, none of which are the name he gave me. We were going to live together, and the name and relationship with his contact on file, a woman we'll call Jill Bates, a name I recognized from an Instagram account that had been watching my stories throughout my and my ex's relationship. I was so shocked. even more heartbroken, and full of rage. But what could I do? I was at a loss and stayed that way for another few months. After a while, I was still heartbroken and confused, but starting to get some festival buzz for the film, which meant redesigning the film's original poster to showcase our new visual selection, Laurels. I was excited to distract myself with something creative and started right away, updating the original poster as well as putting together new poster designs, which required some rearrangement of the credits layout at the bottom of the poster. There I see my ex's band in bold print, capitalized, subtle but apparent and clear. I decided to update his credit too. Guess whose birth name has now been printed in the paper and digital programs of 10 international film festivals? Robert effing Garcia's.
Am I the jerk for not letting my daughter-in-law come to my house after how she treated my grandson at Christmas? My son, Daniel, 28, has been married to Kathy, 28, for 4 years now and they have 2 children. I have a younger daughter, Leah, 25, who is a single mom to Travis, 7. Travis is autistic and has a lot of sensory issues. He receives therapies but it's still a struggle. Everyone knows about his triggers and what we do to avoid them. While I have tried to be welcoming of Kathy, she's always been a little cold. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt as we are a very loud, extroverted family and she's introverted. She never really made an effort to get to know us, despite our numerous attempts. Daniel has told us that her family is a lot different and isn't as warm. So, we accept her personality. The only issue is, she is very cold to Travis. We're all firm with him and have boundaries, but Kathy finds his triggers ridiculous. Important info, Leah and Travis live with my husband and myself. Every year at Christmas, we have a few close relatives over and host a Yankee swap with gag gifts. Last year, my sister-in-law was showing me her contribution. It was one of those singing Santas. Travis had seen this very one at the drugstore and had a meltdown over it. I said it would be okay, I'd just make sure Travis didn't pick that gift and we'd tell whoever did pick it, to please not press play. One person opened it. Travis saw it and instantly got on edge but the person promised they wouldn't play it and he calmed down. When it was Kathy's turn, she stole it. If you've never done a swap before, the point of the game is you can either pick a new gift or steal someone else's if you like it better. She was sitting next to Travis at the time and pressed play. He had a meltdown and had to be brought out of the room. Kathy was laughing. I took her out of the room and asked why the hell she'd do that. She said it was just a joke and she thought we were exaggerating. She then accused us of purposefully making Travis scared of things. We have no reason for doing this. Trust me, for his mental health, we wish these things didn't trigger him. But they do. I asked why the hell it was so hard for her to just accommodate her nephew. That's when she said that Travis soaks up all the attention and it's not fair that Leah had a kid before them. She and Daniel then promptly left. While Daniel has apologized on the behalf of Kathy, she has refused to do so. We've tried to hold family meetings but she won't show up. Leah has seen Daniel and his kids since, but won't see Kathy. After a few months of back and forth with Kathy making it clear she wouldn't apologize, my husband and I decided Kathy is not welcome in our home until she does and is ready to treat Travis right. We'll still see them but not in our home. Kathy and Daniel have found this unfair. They refuse to meet up for Mother's Day and now won't come to Father's Day brunch, which is their choice but they have made it clear they only made it because we have excluded Kathy from events in our home. Am I the jerk? Edit. I should have seen it coming that people would cry maybe you're favoring Travis and Kathy is resentful and is right to torment a 7-year-old as a result. So, I'll copy and paste a reply I made to one of these people. My younger grandkids get time with us without Travis. We do plenty of things that Travis wouldn't want to do. They've even slept over plenty of times when Leah takes Travis to visit her late husband's family. Not everything revolves around Travis. However, yes, we do have to make accommodations for him. It's just a fact that he can't be around too much stimulation. But Leah has never insisted anyone else change their lifestyle or plans for him. Sometimes it just means that she and Travis won't go. We have been aware since the diagnosis that it is a rough line to walk and we have done what we can to make sure no one is left out. There are times Travis comes first, for example, in his own home, but there are just as many times that his cousins come first, such as in their own home and at other events. But just as it wouldn't be fair to make everything about Travis, not everything can be about his cousins either. As a whole family, there are things we cannot do. Doesn't mean they don't get to do them separately. But we can't leave Travis out all the time. Kathy was cold like this long before Travis was born and leading up to his diagnosis. Again, this time we were doing all we can to include her. I invited her to lunch, just us and my son. She is just not a big extended family person, which is fine. But she can't bully her nephew. What's the most disrespectful thing a guest ever did in your home? When I was in my late teens, maybe 19, my dad invited his brother and his new mistress turned wife and her 2 brats to our house. We had 2 cats, but realistically they were my cats because I spent the most time with them, loved them, and took care of them. I didn't really fit into the conversation, being so young, so I hung in the living room while the older adults were in the kitchen. My uncle's new wife, I can't bring myself to call her aunt. Kids were going nuts over my cats. They were 2 boys, 9 and 7, both with behavioral problems. They could not control themselves at all. They did not have manners or any regard for things that weren't theirs. So I resigned myself to watching them, because I didn't trust the 2 little shits around my cats and their mom, and my uncle sure weren't keeping an eye on them. I even made sure to gently warn them, something along the lines of be nice and gentle, or you'll spook them. So these brats drug all the cat toys I had out and start going crazy trying to get reactions out of my cats. Most cats don't appreciate a lot of upfront energy like that. They're not like dogs. So my cats mostly just stared in bewilderment or ignored them. Then I watched one of these little shits reach out and slap my tortoiseshell cat across the head to get her to look at him. It was the 9-year-old, who damn well knew better for sure, and he didn't hold back in his swing. My poor girl was bowled over by it. I was pissed AF. I dragged him up off the floor and told him to leave my cats alone, then effectively banished him and his brother to the kitchen for their lousy guardians to watch them. He's lucky I didn't smack him. I've never hit a kid, but that would be the thing that drove me to it. After that I made it clear to his parents that their kids weren't welcome at the house anymore. My mom and dad, who also weren't fans of the less than behaved brats, didn't dissuade me. A month later, the 9-year-old pulled the same harassment towards my grandmother's 2 cats. Her orange tabby, a sweet little shy girl who was nervous around almost everyone, was terrified out of her mind because the 9-year-old was chasing her around my grandparents' house. Room to room, he chased her out of all her normal hiding spots that she retreated to when she was overwhelmed. I've never seen that cat as scared as she was. So naturally, I stepped in because my grandmother was too nice to tell her new daughter-in-law's kids to settle the F down. He played outside after that. To me, there's just nothing more disrespectful than mistreating the pets of your host. Animal abuse in any form is disgusting, but they're a part of the family, they should be treated as such, not like living breathing toys or entertainment to throw and break. My roommates tried to kick me out for sleeping with an older guy. I'm 22 and the guy I'm having intimacy with is a 33-year-old man I met on a dating app, and it's pissing off my roommates that I bring him over our apartment late night to my bedroom to have intimacy with him. We only share a kitchen. We all have our own bedrooms and bathrooms in our own rooms. We don't live on campus. We live in an apartment off campus and we don't share rent or split it. We all pay individual rent for our own rooms. He doesn't bother my roommates, he doesn't talk to them. They just see him enter the apartment and then get all salty and judgment cause he's old. We don't make any noise, it just bothers them I bring him over. They make comments all the time how I have daddy issues and I should just hook up with someone my age. My roommates are ages 20/21/21, all female, and 2 of them have boyfriends and their boyfriends stay the night with them all the time too, but they are around our age, so I think it just bothers them my man is old. They said it makes them feel uncomfortable that I'm bringing some old guy to our apartment late night, and they'll make jokes like I bet he has a wife and a bunch of kids. He doesn't. He is single and divorced and no kids. We're just having fun. I went to his place before too, but he just lives really far away, and with my schedule, it's easier for him to come all the way here to see me, especially since I don't have my own car. My roommates try to make me look like a villain because I'm sleeping with an old guy, and I really don't think it matters. I can do what I want with my life and they aren't my father to where they should care this much about who I'm effing. It actually creeps me out that they care this much. I don't care about who's in their bedroom. I know I'm not breaking any rules. They reported me to the management at our apartments, and they told them basically that I'm a grown adult and I'm not doing anything against the law, so my roommates can't do anything about it. I don't even care that it makes them feel threatened or uncomfortable. They are just going to have to live with it.
For men who used to be creepy towards women and have since stopped, what was it that made you realize you were creepy, that prompted you to change? When I broke up with my first serious girlfriend, I was totally heartbroken. I called her all the time, cried on the phone. I even threatened to unalive myself and told her so. This went on for some time. Eventually I threatened again to unalive myself and went to bed intoxicated. I woke up to a voicemail from her crying her eyes out, begging me not to do it. I was so ashamed about my behavior. I realized in that message what I had become. It was absolutely her right, as it was mine to end a relationship at any time for any reason without being hounded and traumatized by the ex. I was evil and toxic. I apologized and promised never to do it again. After that I left her alone. I was still heartbroken, but I found comfort in my friends and in activities and hobbies instead. I had several failed relationships after her, but I never again treated a woman this way. This was over 15 years ago and now I am married. I have been tempted many times to contact her and apologize some more for my behavior, but the truth is she is better off without me in her life. I hope.
For employees of Reddit, what red flags have caused you to deny a sale? Guy asked for a handgun. I asked why, and he told me it was for work, in private security. Showed me his firearm license as well as his security license. Sent off scans of these for background checks, and showed him the products we had. It all seemed pretty normal. His record was found to be clean, so when he came back, I gave him the gun. Now see, the thing is, he had his son with him. The kid was maybe 5, and this guy picked up the gun and asked for a box of ammo and started looking for his wallet. I turned around to grab some ammo, looked back, he handed the gun to the kid. Children that age have no frame of reference for real guns, only for toys. So if you give a child a gun, within a second, the moment they have a gun in their hands, they'll point it straight at someone and pull the trigger. This is what happens every time a young child shoots someone. It always happens within 3 seconds of a child holding the gun that it gets fired into the nearest person. So I turn around, and I see this kid pointing the handgun I just gave his dad not 10 seconds ago, right at my face. Click 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 click. The kid is just pulling the trigger non-stop. Dad FG laughs, and says he's just playing. The kid is giggling and laughing, and I go from deathly pale to red with blinding rage in quick succession. I take that gun away and deny the sale. It turned into an argument, called the boss, who backed me up as soon as he heard what happened. The thing is, gun stores talk. We called up every other store in 100 miles that sold guns, told them about this, and sent our copies of his licenses to them via email. That kind of blatant negligence may fly in Hicksville out in Bumfuck County, where idiots think hunting rabbits with an AK is all fine and dandy, but goddamn it, we have some FG standards. I heard all sorts of horror stories from other gun store employees while working there. PPL very obviously intending to murder, people threatening the clerks, people getting their hands on guns and trying to rob the store with them. People related to a psychopath. What is your craziest story? When I was younger, my little sister made 3 attempts to harm me, but thankfully she was too small to succeed. We were 7 and 5 years old at the time. The first incident happened because I had refused to sleep in her bed, which she believed was a sacrifice to protect her from the boogeyman. Here's the longer version of the story. We each had our own rooms, but for 2 years I wasn't allowed to sleep in mine. Every time I tried, my sister would have a tantrum and our parents would convince me to stay in her room just to get everyone to sleep. They even installed a bunk bed in her room, but she still insisted that we share a single bed. One night I woke up to find that she had wet the bed. I was upset because I didn't want to be there in the first place and now I was covered in pee. She yelled at me to get back in bed, but I refused. Frustrated, she got up and attempted to attack me, accidentally smearing more urine on me in the process. At that point, both of us were screaming, and our parents woke up and came to see what was happening. I don't recall the exact conversation as it's been almost 30 years, but essentially she demanded that I sleep in the pee-soaked bed and she would sleep against the wall as if nothing had happened. When our parents disagreed, she became distressed and admitted that she believed there was a monster in the closet. She had insisted on sharing a bed with me to protect herself from being harmed by the monster, and she was terrified that if I moved back to my room or even to a different mattress, the monster would attack her. It's important to remember that she was only 5 years old. To address the situation, my parents removed the mattress from the top bunk and took away the wet one. They convinced me to be a good older sister and protect her from the monster. Reluctantly, I allowed myself to be guided back into bed with her. I can't recall if it happened the following night, but as soon as we were alone, she whispered to me that she made me sleep with her because one day the monster would come out to eat one of us, and she planned to escape while it was attacking me. Without saying a word, I immediately got up and moved to my own room. I was willing to defend her from the monster, but I refused to be used as a distraction for it. When our parents came to investigate the commotion, I refused to return to her room, and eventually they understood and allowed me to stay in my own space. From that point on, I slept with my door locked to ensure my safety. It was a challenging time, and while our parents didn't believe me when I explained that my sister had attempted to suffocate me, I took precautions to protect myself.
My husband is sexist and it's ruining our marriage. I never thought I would be in this situation. My husband and I had a seemingly perfect relationship, but it all started to unravel when he became stuck in outdated gender roles. I'm a strong, independent woman who believes in equality and breaking stereotypes, so it was a huge problem for me when he expected me to be the nurturing homemaker while he just sat on the couch and watched TV. We argued about it constantly, but I was powerless to change his mind. One day, while venting my frustrations to a friend over a few glasses of wine, she dropped a bombshell on me. She had been secretly seeing my husband behind my back. Not only that, but he had confided in her about our relationship issues and his antiquated views on gender roles. My heart dropped. I couldn't believe it. The person I trusted the most had betrayed me in the worst way possible. It was a double betrayal, and it felt like my world was crumbling around me. I realized that our relationship was beyond repair. I needed a partner who saw me as an equal, who supported my ambitions, and who challenged societal norms alongside me. So, I took a deep breath and set out on a journey of self-discovery and empowerment. I had no idea what the future held, but I was determined to rewrite my own story. I was ready to embrace the chaos and take control of my life. I was ready to find a partner who was just as stubborn and headstrong as I was. But then something unexpected happened. I met someone who was different from anyone I had ever known. He was kind, understanding, and open-minded. He listened to me, he supported my ambitions, and he challenged societal norms alongside me. He was the perfect partner, and I couldn't believe it. Could this be the answer to all my problems? Could this be the person I had been searching for all along? Only time will tell. But for now, I'm ready to embrace the chaos and rewrite my own story, because damn it, I refuse to let outdated gender roles ruin my future. My fiancé's ex died and my relationship is in shambles. My fiancé, 30M, and I, 31F, have been together for nearly 3 years. We were super excited for our wedding that's gonna take place 6 months from now. I had a hard boundary against exes in the relationship and we both agreed that no pictures, no contact, no stories, nothing. Prior to meeting me, he was in a serious relationship for about the same time as us. However, his ex, 29F, one day told him she no longer loves him and they broke up. He was heartbroken and it took him months to heal. Since his ex was blocked, her mom contacted my fiancé and told him she had cancer and wanted to meet him one last time. This was a difficult decision considering my boundaries, but I felt really sorry this girl was losing her life so young, so I supported my fiancé's decision to see her, but on the condition I'll be in the same room as them. Apparently, she had developed skin cancer and doctor had drawn up a prognosis for her a few months before they broke up. The ex told both of us that she wanted him to lead a happy life with a woman who could share a life with him, and wished us well. That's why she lied about not loving him anymore, and that she always loved him all this time. She recently died 3 weeks ago and my fiancé is a mess. I can't unsee the way they both held each other's hands, and the look of nostalgia and love in his eyes for her, as I was looking on, feeling like an outsider. It's so difficult and hurtful to see him cry about another woman who he once loved. I literally can't unhear things he said to his mom in the kitchen one day. I wonder what life could have been like with her. We could have been a happy family of our own. She wanted kids with me and we could have named her Rose like she wanted. Where does this leave me? Why am I in his life still if he'd rather be with someone else? I promised myself that I'll only ever be with a guy for whom I am his one and only and first priority. I saw that in him before, but now I don't know. Trust me, I am not a heartless person and I would rather not put myself in any position where I'll be considered myself a monster. But this feels incredibly complicated and extremely hurtful. I feel like a third wheel in my once happy, thriving relationship. He has been reaching out to me for support and I lent a listening ear, and he has been telling me so many stories from his time with her, and I didn't like one bit of this. My therapist told me while having empathy is important, I shouldn't have to lose myself in my relationship even if circumstances are hard. 2 days ago, he received a package in the mail and it was from the ex's sister. Apparently it was a photo album from their old times that the ex wanted him to have. My fiancé held it so gently and teared up little. And I literally broke down on the floor crying, having a panic attack. I think I almost unloaded all of what I've been feeling, the third wheel, the unfairness of the whole situation based on what my boundaries around exes had been, my anger at the ex for inserting herself in our lives for no good reason when both of us were literally so happy with how things were panning out regarding our wedding, questioning where his loyalties lied, and I think I did it in one of the most hurtful ways. I told him that we need to pause our wedding plans for now and wanted a week or two off to think about our relationship. I'm at my sister's place and haven't been able to sleep or eat properly ever since. It's almost as if I'm falling out of love with my fiancé and he has been calling me and texting me nonstop. I feel so guilty right now. I'm afraid I might trigger something bad within him. He's had problems in the past. He says his ex already died and it's gonna break him if I left him too. If I left him too? Emphasis on the two. I'm just done. What the heck am I supposed to do? You want proof that my fiancé is sick? You got it. I am engaged to my fiancé Joey. He recently had surgery on his leg and hip, but there were complications, and he has been sick and weak since. We try not to ask for help, but this has put a big financial strain on us, to the point where we've spent our wedding savings on his recovery. We are fine with this because if we need to have a courthouse wedding, we're cool with it. We just want him to be healthy. But we did set up a temporary donation page to help with some of the expenses. A friend of mine, Carla, 25F, donated $10 about a month ago, and I reached out to her to thank her. Last week we posted an update, not asking for more money, but just to let people know that Joey has had another setback and the doctors are creating an all-new treatment plan for him. Carla commented publicly and said the following: I'm beginning to question if he has actually been sick this long or if y'all are just trying to get more money for your wedding. Who takes this long to recover from surgery, especially when you're an athlete? I said, I am very offended and appalled that you would accuse us of faking anything. Maybe you're just having a bad day or a moment of bad judgment, but how shamefully low of you. She replied, I want my donation back unless you can show proof that he's sick. In a hospital bed or sitting in a doctor's office. Anything? I sent her $10 to get her off our backs, but I also sent her a video, with Joey's approval, the proof she asked for. One of the concerns Joey has had is that he will get severely nauseous if he eats protein, which is what he's supposed to be doing, and when he overexerts himself, which he does sometimes. I sent her a video of him dry heaving into an emesis bag in the middle of PT. Now, one of his doctors asked us to record his PT so they can see the progression of him not feeling well to hopefully make some adjustments, so I didn't take this video just to send to Carla, but to me it seemed like solid proof since she was asking for it. She said, WTH? I have emetophobia, I didn't know this, and this just triggered me so bad. I hope you're happy with yourself. I feel like I've been traumatized, I said, so now you have $10 more to process this trauma in therapy.
A cop, called the cops, on a cop.
This FU actually happened on Halloween, but I'm just getting time to post it now. I don't go out on Halloween because I'm in my mid-20s and I'm just not into going out on the same night as people who rage and get drunk on a holiday that was intended for children to enjoy. My neighborhood gets slammed with kids, and I enjoy handing out candy anyway, so no big deal. Kids start showing up at around noon, and throughout the day I handed out over 350 plus goodie bags that I made up with 4 pieces of candy in each. It was intense. The last of the kids showed up at around 10 p.m., right around the time that the hooligans started running around with shaving cream wreaking havoc. My neighbor across the street lost his cool and ended up calling the cops on the kids, and they came by and parked 2 marked cars at the corner of my block for about an hour, then they left. Right around this time I noticed my neighbor to the right is having a party. Rather, their high school age daughter is having a party. These kids are all wasted, carrying on, but whatever. I was young once, as long as they stay over there it's cool. So around 11:15 I decide to go out into my backyard to have a cigarette, but I walk through my front door to bring some trash to the cans and I was going to go through my gate into my backyard. As I'm turning the corner I hear a radio. Now I'm a cop. I know what a radio sounds like. I hear keys jingling and I hear a radio. It's dark though and I can't really see, but I make out the silhouette of a cop walking into my neighbor's backyard. The keys, the radio, the shoulder patches from the local PD, and the reflection of the name badge that I caught a glimpse of made me sure that this was a cop. I'm thinking in my head that these cops came back that were parked at the end of the block and noticed this party and were walking around my neighbor's driveway to see what was going on in the backyard. I decided to go inside and watch what was going on from the window. All of a sudden there are about 15 kids in the street in front of the house and I see the cop under a street light on his phone. He's sitting with a kid who is clearly blackout drunk who can't move. I assumed he was calling to make sure this kid had a ride home and was going to be okay. I can hear his radio, and I notice he has a gun, a nightstick, the whole deal. It's occurring to me now that he's there clearing the party out, but I don't see a radio car anywhere. I'm thinking okay, maybe the call came over the radio and he knew my neighbors so he was coming by after his shift to tell them to cool it or something. I then start hearing one of these kids asking the cop to mace him. I'm sitting here thinking okay, now I'm sure this isn't a costume. Costumes don't come with mace. I decided to go into my backyard where I could get a better view and hear them better. So I'm sitting there and I decide to break out my camera and start filming this, because if this cop maces this kid he shouldn't be a effing cop. One of the kids in the group says something about the kid being 14 and then the kid is asking for more vodka before he gets maced. The cop then starts warning him that it really hurts and it isn't going to be funny. The kid keeps pressuring him and finally he folds. He maces this kid in the street in front of this house. The kid starts screaming in agony. My neighbor's daughter starts telling everyone to get back into the backyard, and this cop starts going with everyone. I'm sitting in my backyard and I'm effing astonished. I can't believe that I just saw a effing cop mace an intoxicated 14-year-old. He should have been making sure they weren't in the street carrying on at the very least. He was now going back into the party though, which was really freaking me out because now I'm thinking that he's at a high school party drinking with his effing firearm. Having just seen him mace someone, I'm thinking that it's only a matter of time before he hands his gun to someone to see and he have a national news story about cops again. I decide to call the local PD. I tell them who I am, where I live, and what I'm seeing. The guy on the phone freaked out. He said that there would be cops there in 5 minutes. 4 unmarked cars pull up to my house and I'm already standing outside. I show them the video of the cop macing the kid and they go to my neighbor's house. My heart is racing at this point because I can't believe what I just did. I'm thinking I should have gone over there before calling the cops, but I work in a different department and a lot of the guys out where I live don't like people from my department, and being that he was drinking I thought he would just tell me to F off. About 45 minutes go by and they have this cop in handcuffs and they're taking him out of the house. They come over to me with his gun belt and tell me they want to show me something. His gun is fake. His radio is real. His mace is real. His mag pouches are empty. His keys are just his keys. His baton is real. I'm confused as hell and I ask them what the F is going on. Turns out, this kid's dad is a cop in the department. He's 19 and knows my neighbor's daughter from his high school. He thought it would be a good idea to take his dad's uniform and gun belt and wear it as a costume. The local cops told me that I should have gone over there and seen what was going on before calling them. They ended up charging the kid with endangering the welfare of a minor for macing the drunk 14-year-old. At least that's what they told me, but they're probably going to bring him in and then make his dad pick him up. I'm sure his dad is going to be in a ton of trouble for letting his kid go out there with one of his uniforms and his gun belt. Now my neighbors think I'm a douchebag for calling the cops on their party and getting their daughter's friend arrested. They're pissed that I called the cops on a party. They don't believe that I thought the guy was actually cop. Now I have to worry about my car/house getting egged or worse. The local PD thinks I'm a douchebag for turning in one of their cops even though he wasn't actually a cop. It's the principal. All in all, a pretty spooky Halloween. My boyfriend smells when I'm going to get my period before I know it. I have PCOS, so my periods are regular. My boyfriend and I have been dating for a year and a half and have been living together for 7 months, and he never said anything about this until a little while after we started living together. One day, he asked me out of the blue, "Are you cramping?" I say, "No." "Why?" He says, "Never mind." But I'm wondering why he thought I was. Did I seem irritable or something? And I keep pestering him for a reason, but he shuts me down, and I eventually give up. I get my period 2 days later. I make some jokes about him being psychic and ask him how he knew, but he just goes, "I guess I'm psychic." A couple months later, we're packing for a weekend camping trip, and he says, "I should bring tampons." I say, "I don't think I need to. My last period was 2 weeks ago, and they almost always are more than a month apart." He's like, "No, really, you should." I still remember the incident from a couple months ago. And so I asked him, half jokingly, if he's predicting my period again. He tells me, seemingly really embarrassed, that yes, he actually is. He says he has always been able to smell when a woman is about to have her period. He grew up with 3 older sisters and said he first noticed it in childhood. This makes me self-conscious and I asked him what the smell is, but he says it's really subtle, almost not a smell. I didn't know he had a good sense of smell because he's always been really particular about things. I myself can't smell at all, but this was on another level. He said it's hard to describe the smell, and he once mentioned it to his dad as a kid and his dad had no idea what he was talking about. He also apparently once asked about it on Yahoo Answers lol. And no one else related to it. I'm the first person he's ever dated for more than a few months, and so he says. I'm the first girlfriend he's brought this up to. And yes, I did end up getting my period on the trip. Now he always gives me a heads up when he smells it. I'm so torn about it. On one hand, it's useful to have a few days notice so I can be prepared. My periods are really painful and sometimes really heavy, and on the other hand, it freaks me out a little, probably irrationally. He asked me not to tell any of our friends because he doesn't want to make anyone self-conscious, which is fair, but I need to tell someone about this. It's so odd.
Am I the a-hole for not accepting my sister's relationship with my ex even though she had cancer? I'm a 25-year-old woman, and when I was 4, my dad married my stepsister's mom, who was 3 back then. We've pretty much grown up as a big family, and my stepsister and I were super close pals. When she was 14, she got sick with cancer, and it took her about 2 years to get better. During that time, my parents got all protective and asked me to help out a lot. I even gave up my after-school stuff to work and help with her medical bills. Plus, I became her personal driver to appointments and stuff. I missed out on dances and fun things if she couldn't be there. I did most of it willingly, though I wasn't thrilled about quitting my volleyball team. I did get a bit upset about that, but things got sorted out. I mean, it's pretty okay to have a bit of a meltdown considering the situation, right? Anyway, off to college I went. I met this guy, let's call him Ben, during my junior year, and we fell head over heels for each other. We moved in together after graduating, so we've been roommates for about 3 years now. Everything was going great until July came around, and I walked into our room only to catch Ben getting cozy with my sister. Long story short, we broke up, tears were shed, he moved out, and all that drama. At first, my sister said sorry, but then she kind of backed off. I thought she was just giving me some space. But last week, she called me and said she and Ben were in love and wanted to give me a heads up before they went public with their pictures together. I was so upset that I left her sitting at the restaurant alone and didn't even pay my part of the bill. She ended up Venmoing me for it later. My parents found out, and they called me over to their place. They were pretty disappointed that I wasn't supporting my sister and Ben's relationship. They brought up the fact that my sister had a tough time learning social stuff because of her cancer when she was a teenager. I don't really buy it though, because I've seen her hanging out just fine. Plus, we spent tons of time together when she was sick, so that logic doesn't add up. They even said if I can't accept their relationship, they might cut off contact with me. I tried explaining that I'm their daughter too, and they should see my side, but they're all about me being jealous. Just to set things straight, I'm not jealous of her. I'm not upset that Ben chose her. I'm just sad about the end of our relationship and feeling hurt because of the betrayal. I definitely don't want to be with someone who cheats. What really gets to me is that my sister picked Ben over me, even though she knew we were in a serious, long-term relationship, and she knows how much it hurts me. Now, nobody in my family is talking to me, and I'm getting messages from relatives calling me selfish and jealous.
I used my racially motivated alter ego to take a girl out on a date and it was the most fun I have ever had. I have been really sad lately, so I decided to match with this girl on Tinder and on a date with her try out this white N-word character of mine which I have been working on relentlessly. I was inspired to create this as my alter ego after watching Boondocks. The characters in the show look so cool, and despite being white, I wanted to be just like them. So before the date with this genuinely sweet and wholesome girl, I went out and copped myself some Jordan 1s. I got an oversized Kobe Bryant t-shirt, as well as some jewelry, oversized pants as well which I could sag in without too much struggle, and headed out the door to pick my date up. I picked her up in this attire while blasting Mafia N-words by 3 6 Mafia. I greeted her by saying what's good shawty you look fine as hell sheesh, before introducing myself as Be Smooth. She told me her name was Sarah to which I replied, looking good as hell Tasha goddamn, you could be my baby mama. I then proceeded to play the song I had on loop for the entire 40-minute ride to the restaurant. The restaurant was chillis. After the third time the song played she asked if she could switch the song, so instead of responding I just turned the volume way up. I also finished every sentence with you feel me, or know what I'm saying ka. When we got to the restaurant I ordered about $60 worth of chicken wings and even casually ate out of her plate sometimes. I then whipped out a flask and told her if she wanted a sip of the magic juice. After she said no I called her boring, then excused myself to the bathroom. I didn't go to the bathroom, I just left and drove home.
What finally made you cut that friend off? My friend of almost 20 years privately messaged my husband and asked him to come over when her husband was out of town for a sleepover. My husband was shocked and disgusted and told her off and blocked her. If that wasn't enough, when I confronted her about it she screams at me, said it was innocent and that she actually wanted both of us to come hang out for supper for a double date, which made no sense. When I told her that I felt like I couldn't trust her, she said she couldn't trust me either because I didn't tell her right away that my mom had cancer after she was diagnosed. I took some time to process it before I told anyone. And my mom didn't want anyone to know. It was terminal. My mom had passed away a few years ago at that point that she brings this up during this argument. She ended up raging out with a ton of insults about my appearance which then resulted in her blocking me. Sometimes the trash takes itself out.
My 27M wife, 25M, cheated on me and I work at the same job as the both of them. I'm sure many of you can relate to the feeling of betrayal when you find out that your significant other has been unfaithful. I know I can. You see, I was living the dream with my wife, the love of my life, until one day when I discovered that she had been cheating on me. And if that wasn't bad enough, the guy she was sleeping with worked at the same company as me. It was like a punch in the gut, knowing that while I was working my butt off, she was having an affair with some sleazy coworker. I felt like my entire world had been turned upside down and I was filled with a mix of anger, sadness, and an overwhelming desire for revenge. So, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I confronted both of them, unleashing the fury that had been building up inside of me. Every day at the office became a living nightmare, a constant reminder of the pain she had inflicted upon me. I couldn't escape it, so I decided to use it to my advantage. I became the ultimate badass, climbing the corporate ladder with a vengeance, leaving a trail of crushed egos and shattered dreams in my wake. As for my cheating wife and her worthless lover, their affair was exposed to the entire office, leaving them both branded as the office pariahs. But, as it turns out, that wasn't the end of the story. Oh no, there was something far more sinister lurking beneath the surface, something that would shake the very foundations of everyone involved. It was a secret so shocking, so mind-boggling, that it would reshape the entire narrative of my life. I won't spoil the surprise, but I can tell you this much: it was a twist that I, and many of you, would never have seen coming. So, stay tuned, because trust me, it's something you won't want to miss. Tired of hearing about everyone else's SIDF up lives? Look, I get it. Arguably most people in life grew up in broken homes, live in squalor, deal with the holes or psychos on the regular, have health problems, are in some kind of legal trouble, etc. Despite my own family life growing up, things have mellowed out considerably since, well, most of them passed away or moved to other parts of the country. I am very fortunate to have not had to live in a ghetto more than a couple brief stints in my adult life. I've never been the victim of rape, domestic physical abuse, prodigious theft, etc. I'm still depressed. I still work at a job because my mental problems prevent me from doing much to improve my circumstances, and this is the one place I can rely on, until they fire me, but I'm a good enough worker. I'm not on the boss's asset list yet. I have the extreme fortune of the one family member I have left being kind enough to put me up when I could no longer afford to live on my own, but that also means once they croak, too, I'm as good as homeless. And yet, my life feels wasted and I'm very unfulfilled and miserable. And yet, I try to be zen about it all, you know? I try to just get through the day. And yet, Jesus F. King Christ, all I hear about is how miserable the world is. I don't watch television, I stay off Twitter, but I keep seeing misery porn and all the algos. Some days I can't resist, and I doom spiral down an hours-long binge of misery content on YouTube and Reddit. I pull myself out of it. Stay off the comp for a while. And yet, everyone at work has some ST sob story. Either they hate the job so much, they have constant nightmarish family situations, or they live next to / with crackheads. Everyone is miserable. My friends, who are much more successful at life than I am, all have depression. I go on Discord to see if my chat buddies want to talk about some pop culture nonsense, and sure it comes up, but also, here's 3 rants in a row about how I've kept up and miserable their lives are. Christ. Do I actually need to pull a Thor-ow and live in a cabin in the woods? And probably die of dysentery in 3 months? Or more likely, get murdered and roped, in that order, by crackheads who want to steal my toenails and grind them into powder for a placebo hit? I know I can't be mad. Everyone's life is SID, and I really feel bad for people, and I wish there was some way their lives could be better. But goddamn, I'm barely treading water mentally, and every day is a wave of more misery trying to suck me down under. What the FK happened? When did life turn this goddamn bleak? Can't enjoy goddamned anything for 5 minutes, because you can't turn around, but for someone else having a mental breakdown. Anyway, I really hope all of you out there are having a good day, or at least a better time than all the sad sacks, myself included, I keep running into all the time. Peace.
What's the most messed up Reddit post of all time? There is an extremely infamous relationship advice post by a husband, which started off by him saying that his wife isn't the smartest cookie in the jar. The couple was struggling financially, living month to month, but they got by. They had kids too. The wife suddenly gets the genius idea that they could make a bunch of cash if their car crashed and got written off. This happened to one of her friends who won an insurance claim after purposely driving into a ditch and was encouraging others to do so. The husband says no every time the wife talks about it. He explains reasons why and finally makes her promise not to talk about it at all. Next week, the husband gets a call from the police saying the wife had run into a terrible accident and is currently in police custody. Well, as it turns out, the wife decided to go through with her plan behind her husband's back. She had been waiting at a traffic stop, then suddenly accelerated forward during a red light and drove headfirst into a vehicle coming from the other side at top speed. She thankfully wasn't injured, but the other vehicle had a mother and a 3-year-old kid who were instantly unalived, and another teenage kid was in critical condition who ended up dying hours later in the hospital. The husband visits his wife in custody and she acts all proud with no remorse as if she did something great for her family. The husband made the post asking whether he should come clean about her talking to him earlier about the accident and insurance fraud, which will likely add decades to her sentence. The post stayed up for less than an hour.
What are the best responses to I have a boyfriend? Well then I want a divorce, and I'm taking the kids, and the cat. And I have a dog. Oh sorry, I thought we were talking about things we play with. Oh, well, is he seeing anyone? Just because there's a goalie doesn't mean you can't score, unless it's 2018 World Cup Pickford, in which case I have no chance. In that case, he's more likely to murder you, so why not just be with me instead? And I have a Planet Fitness membership. Oh sorry, I thought we were talking about things we don't care about. That's okay, he can watch us, once we are together. You can say whoa, no need to put a label on things, I didn't know you wanted to move things along so fast. If you were single then it would be me against the world for you, but it's better this way, because at least now it's a 1v1. Instead, why don't you make me your boyfriend, and make him just a boyfriend? Well now you can have 2, just make sure I'm the main dish and he's an appetizer. What about your sister? Does she have a boyfriend? Well I have 80 million power in Rise of Kingdoms. See, you choose Rome when you start out and use its gathering bonus to acquire resources and train troops. The Roman infantry has a movement speed buff and a defense bonus. With this combo it's easy to steal from other players. During the mid-game you can unlock techs and train advanced Roman legionary. With Commander Julius Caesar you'll conquer territories quickly. Within 3 days your power can surpass 5 million.
My lump of lard patient ripped through his shirt. He convinced me that he wasn't fat, so I dared him to eat cookies till he drops. This guy told me that he wasn't fat, but I could clearly see that he ripped open through his compression shirt tank. He looked like he hadn't seen grass in years and like he was clutching onto his V-card for dear life. The man had busted through his shoes, skinny jeans tighter than a nun's cooch, a beer belly that shined from grease, and a nice chewed baseball cap to mask his neckbeard. When a patient comes to me with a weight issue, they usually try to clean up their appearance because they feel bad of how their frames look. But this guy was incredible. It was like he just rolled out of his bed when the camera crew left from filming his My 600-Pound Life episode. The kicker? Homeboy was only 21. If you're that young looking the way he did, something is definitely wrong that he can't control. It could potentially be depression, a food addiction, or even insulin resistance. I decided I'd put my judgments aside and try to give the best help I could to this patient like I would any other. I ran some tests and he had nothing predisposed to him that would cause his obesity. So after I grilled him for about 20 minutes, he coughed up the fact that he has a terribly nighttime eating problem. This guy door dashes buckets of lo mein noodles and then double dashes multiple pints of ice cream per night. I mean, who only eats lo mein and ice cream? Dude, at least get orange chicken too. Anyhow, it was clear that his problem was binge eating at night, but it was like he kept convincing himself and trying to convince me that what he was doing was normal. That was so far from the truth. What he didn't know was he was taking his own life away slowly but definitely surely. Nighttime snacking is dangerous and it's something you almost can't get rid of. Your body needs to naturally consume as many calories before bed. I told my patient that we needed to tackle his absurd appetite. When I took a better look at them, the matted hair, the eye bags, the acne, the odors, I'm no psychiatrist, but I'm almost sure that they were going through the fullest extent of their depression because of their nighttime appetite. I recommended that we start taking preventive measures and reintroduce new eating habits. As a precaution, I asked him if he was allergic to anything and he said he was allergic to water. I was a bit confused, so I asked him what kind of reaction happens when he drinks water. He looked me dead in the eyes and said it made him pee. Unfortunately, that is a feature of the human body, not a bug. I didn't think I would ever have to explain that to a person. Anyway, I recommended black coffee before bed and heavily suggested water as well to kill his appetite because something told me he wasn't drinking any water. I told him that if the coffee didn't work I'd look for something else. Somehow, my patient came back 3 weeks later 15 pounds heavier. He said he couldn't get past the bitter taste of black coffee and he was constantly craving 40-piece chicken nuggets, so he gave up and went back to his old habits. Luckily for him, during that month period I had found night food cookies, which were completely healthy to eat at night. I was testing its effectiveness because they're low in calories and are meant to be eaten past midnight, unlike other junk foods. Also, they're the perfect Chips Ahoy dupe for those of you who struggle with binge eating. I ate them every night and didn't see any changes in my weight or feel unhealthy, and I was getting better sleep whenever I ate them. So, I had just the thing for my patient, and recommended the night food cookies with complete confidence. His eyes glowed when I showed him cookies. This was like striking gold. Eating cookies to lose weight? His big back snatched that bag out of my hands. 3 months later, he came back for his appointment, and there were so many noticeable differences in him. He said that the cookies helped regulate his sleep, so he always woke up ready for the day. He told me that little by little, he was feeling better every day instead of waking up depressed. So, he was motivated to work out and start taking care of himself. He went to the gym 3 times a week, and since he wasn't binge eating so much because of the night food cookies, he started eating in a caloric deficit. He also shaved his matted hair off, and he said he felt so much relief when he took that load off of his head. And he was eating more healthier foods than just the night food cookies, so his acne was clearing up. Not to mention, he didn't smell bad, which meant he finally got the energy to shower regularly. It was nice seeing him be put together. Though, the best part came when he stepped onto the scale and he had dropped 20 pounds. With his weight, you could barely tell, but it was impressive and such a huge accomplishment for him. He was proud that he was finally losing the weight and was happy he didn't have to get rid of his nighttime snacking. I could instantly see he was on the path of rebuilding himself. So from then on, I always recommend night food cookies to people who struggle with nighttime binge eating. It's patients like these that remind me how much I love my job, even if they lack common sense.
People who've found something unexpected in their new homes. What's your story? When I was fresh out of college, I moved into an old Victorian house that had been converted into apartments. The place had character, with its creaky wooden floors, high ceilings, and antique fixtures. It was my first adult home, and I was excited to make it my own. A few weeks after moving in, I decided to do a deep clean of the place. I was dusting the built-in bookshelves in the living room when I noticed that one of the panels at the back of the shelf seemed loose. Intrigued, I pulled at it, and to my surprise, it swung open to reveal a hidden compartment. Inside the compartment was a small, dusty box. My heart pounded with excitement as I pulled it out and opened it. Inside was a collection of old letters, tied together with a faded ribbon. They were love letters, written during World War II, between a soldier named Thomas and his sweetheart, Eleanor, who had lived in my apartment. The letters were beautifully written, filled with longing, hope, and a deep love that seemed to leap off the pages. Thomas wrote about his experiences at war, his dreams for the future, and his unwavering love for Eleanor. Eleanor's letters were filled with local news, her daily life, and words of love and encouragement for Thomas. I spent the entire night reading the letters, touched by the love story that had unfolded in my living room decades ago. I felt like I had stumbled upon a treasure, a snapshot of a time long gone and a love that had weathered the trials of war. The discovery of the letters made me feel a deep connection to the history of my new home. I imagined Eleanor, sitting in the same room, writing her letters to Thomas, waiting for his safe return. It was a poignant reminder of the lives that had been lived within these walls, the stories that had unfolded, and the love that had endured. I decided to leave the letters in their hiding place, a hidden piece of history in my new home. But I often think of Thomas and Eleanor, and their love story that I had the privilege to discover. It was an unexpected find, a hidden treasure, that made my new house feel like a home. What was your "you must be kidding me" moment? Worked one summer at a summer school for special needs children about 2 years ago when I was 14. I was just a teacher aide, so most of what I was doing was playing with the lower maintenance children and just running errands for the teachers. One morning, I was helping the kids put their stuff into their cubbies and one of the kids was just standing in front of his, staring at me with his lunch bag in his hands. This was one of the more violent kids who would act up at the slightest of breezes. He was about 11 or 12 and had severe autism. I asked him if he needed help putting his stuff away and he replied with only some mumbling. I asked him to speak clearly and he said, "I'm going to hurt you." I was really confused and asked him to repeat what he said. He then screamed at the top of his lungs, "I'm going to hurt you," and swung his lunchbox straight for my head. Luckily, I kinda expected this kind of thing to happen, so I was ready to duck, and he missed. I was not allowed to even touch any of the students because I was not trained to restrain them, so until the teachers got him under control all I could do was run around the classroom as he chased me, until the teachers got him under control. Once the teachers restrained him, he was under control within about 10 or 15 minutes. When the teacher asked him why he did what he did, he said that he was angry because his dad didn't bring him to Denny's that morning. I was assaulted because a kid didn't get to go to Denny's.
A disgusting man constantly sends my disabled brother explicit photos, so I ruined his life. When I was 13, I was in the pediatric ICU for 2 weeks for a severe illness. During that time, I was molested twice by a desk clerk while my parents were getting food. I didn't understand what happened at the time, so I didn't report it until I was 16. He was never identified. After that, I engaged in some vigilantism online against groomers and pedophiles. It was extremely destructive to my mental health and made me hateful and spiteful towards everyone around me. Eventually, I stopped last year because I was obsessed with it and I couldn't stop feeling depressed due to the nature of what I saw and did. My parents knew something was wrong with me the entire time, and I eventually told them what I did, but not the extent of it. They knew that I reported them to the police, but not how many things aside from that which I would do to ruin their life, until last week. Anyway, a few weeks ago, my mom asked me if I could help identify someone. I asked why and told her I was not going to dox someone who I knew nothing about, and she reluctantly told me that he was constantly sending intimately explicit pictures to my 16-year-old autistic brother. They had blocked him several times, and he kept making new accounts. I have been doing a lot better lately emotionally, and have generally left that part of my life behind, but this made me white hot. My younger brother is emotionally and developmentally stunted. He is extremely intelligent, but he lacks social skills and doesn't understand boundaries. Knowing that he was relatively close to the age that I was assaulted, and the fact that this person was taking advantage of someone with a developmental disability made me furious to the point that I completely lost control and got into the same headspace that I was in from 16. Before I explain what I did, I am 100% absolutely certain it was him. The intimately explicit pictures had his face. I could see a unique tattoo on his forearm, and he had sent voice recordings. Within 5 minutes I had his name. Within 20 minutes I had his address and contact information. Within an hour I contacted the FBI, local police, and local sheriff's office with all of the screenshots. Within 3 hours, his wife, siblings, parents, friends, neighbors, work colleagues, and boss all knew, although I only sent the intimately explicit material to his wife. He made another account, and messaged my brother begging him to stop what was happening, offering him money to do so, etc. I told my brother to block him and ignore him, and then he made another account and threatened to come to my mom and brother's house. My stepdad was in the army, so it wasn't a concern, but still, I sent screenshots of that to law enforcement and his wife. The next day, I got a message on the burner account I used to contact his wife, and she explained that he committed suicide, blaming me for the fact that she lost her husband and her kids lost their father. I feel bad for her, and especially her kids. I feel awful, really. I lost control and took things way too far. I couldn't give less of a poop about the fact that he's dead, but the idea of learning something so horrifying about the man you had children with, only for him to avoid accountability and abandon his family in that way must feel awful. I know it wasn't my fault, but considering she is in grief, I don't blame her at all for seeing it that way. I chose to save one sister and let the annoying one die. Am I the jerk for saving one sister's life and not the other? I, 22, have little identical twin half-sisters, 16, who both have serious kidney issues. They have both sadly reached a point where without a kidney transplant, their quality of life will continue to decline and they might not see the other side of 20. Obviously, myself and my mom are devastated with this news. It wasn't expected that they would be in this position so young. For some background, one of my sisters, Sarah, is very much the tomboy like me. We are really close and enjoy a lot of the same things. We are like two peas in a pod. That's not to say I don't love my other sister Jade, but we simply aren't as close. She's a little more girly, doesn't have many shared interests as me and Sarah do, and so we just don't hang out as often. I also don't see Jade as much in general. Sarah doesn't like her dad's wife, and so she spends less time with them, while Jade adores her so has always spent more time at her dad's place. Both my mom, their dad and both of the girls were totally happy with this setup. Jade also begged to go to a particular boarding school, so I don't see her nearly as much as Sarah, nor have I for a very long time. Maybe one weekend a month for the last couple years and some more over summer/holidays. I still love her dearly, but I hope it's understandable now that I'm just much closer with Sarah. We were equally close until Jade started doing her own thing and making choices for herself, and I don't in any way begrudge that. I wouldn't say B and Jade don't get along, but there have definitely been some big spats over the years. We all got tested to see if it would be possible to do live donations, and I'm the only match. Unfortunately, I obviously only have 2 kidneys. I can only save one of my sisters. There's every chance they might get a kidney from somewhere else, but right now they aren't a priority and aren't high on the transplant list. I basically told my mom, who told their dad, that I want to donate my kidney to Sarah. I thought about it so much. I know this means I am undeniably saying I love Sarah more than Jade, and I guess I do. Unsurprisingly, all hell broke loose about how could I do this to Jade, how could I be so cruel, why would I do this, how can I just play with their lives? I've been getting calls and texts from everyone who knows about this. As far as I know, neither Sarah or Jade have been told. I get it. I'm playing God here. But it's my kidney. Yeah, I feel like scum for choosing one sister over the other, but one is my best friend and the other is, well, not. I feel like a monster for saying it, and I know on a fundamental level it's wrong. Part of me wanted to flip a coin or something, but I couldn't. My whole family seemed to be demonizing me for making this choice. I chose to save one sister and let the annoying one die. To cut a long story short, they both got kidneys, they each got one from the same donor. Our family got to meet the family of the donor and it was really emotional and amazing, and they're both recovering well. There is now understandably massive divides in the family because of how my mom and the girl's dad outright demanded I give my kidney to Jade, because she was the golden child with a bright future, while Sarah was just, effectively, mediocre. I feel less bad now saying this because she's on the road to recovery, but Jade was a flaming jerk who made Sarah's life hell. I presume Sarah chose to spend most of her time with mom because we were so close, but it was mostly because of how Jade treated her like dirt, and their dad and stepmom thought it was basically Jade's right as the superior being or some bull. I ended up not being allowed to donate, but before this, as many suggested, I spoke to my sisters about my decision. Sarah broke down in tears, because it was the first time she ever felt somebody put her first. She told me stories of the things that Jade did with their dad's approval and I was livid. She said if she was my choice, she wouldn't feel guilty knowing it might mean Jade won't get a kidney. I made it clear that I chose her because she is good, and amazing, and I loved her, not because Jade was a horrible person. I then spoke to Jade, and calmly explained that I had to pick, and well, as she knew, we weren't very close and Sarah was a kindred spirit that I was always with. I wasn't surprised that she was mad, I mean, how else would you react? But I didn't expect her to spew such hate, that I'm wasting my kidney. And I'm probably an asshole for it, but I didn't care if she was sick. I effectively said if she hadn't been such a nasty bitch her whole life maybe she wouldn't be dealing with this, and it's a shame that she might have only learned on what may be her deathbed that she won't always be everyone's favorite and she can't treat her own sister like dirt. I've never simultaneously felt so happy and so guilty for getting something off my chest. Due to character count I can't explain the shit she did, but it's horrific. In any case, about 2 weeks after that, Jade asked me to come visit her and said she thought about what I said. I apologized and explained that I knew about everything she had done, as well as the fact Sarah had already resigned herself to death because she knew the whole family would put Jade first. After many tears, things seem to be okay now. She's slowly mending bridges with Sarah. Sarah will be moving in with me soon, so she can finally have a home where she comes first. Jade said she'd like to visit sometime too. So yeah, all wrapped up.
Ex said I was gonna be a dad. She forgot I'm a trans man. 29, trans man, got bottom and top surgery when I was 23, before I met my ex, 28, female. We met a bit after I turned 25, and I of course told her I'm transgender. She didn't really care because she said she really liked me and had fun. So we basically been dating for 3 years. Yes, I have a schlong, and I of course can't produce what biological men produce, but I never planned on ever having kids. I'm still dealing with something that happened in my childhood. While near the middle of the year in 2022, my ex started acting a bit strange, but I didn't like much of it. Our love-making life was good. We didn't fight over really anything. We would talk and communicate about things, and I overall thought our relationship was good. Today after I got home from work, my ex was there. She has the keys to my apartment. She seemed like she was hiding something. She was trying not to smile. I'm kind of confused, but she says we need to talk. So I sit down beside her and asked, "What's wrong? Did something happen?" You know, the basic worried question. I thought she was going to break up with me, not going to lie, until she pulled out a pregnancy test. It was positive. I stared at it for a few minutes until I got up, excited till I realized I can't get her pregnant. I can tell by the way she reacted to when my face dropped. She knew what I was thinking of. Not going to go into much detail about our fight, but I did kick her out. I forced her to give my spare key back, and I blocked her. Was a crappy way to find out. I don't know what to do right now. This hurts so bad. Criminal defense lawyers, who's the most disturbing potential client you've come across? About 18 years ago, I represented a man who was homeless and was insane. He thought there was a website that said he did the deed with his sister and everyone on earth knew it. He lived in his car but kept his shampoo in a locked box in the trunk so no one would put poison in it. Slightly paranoid individual. He was at a sandwich shop across from a trauma hospital. The 17-year-old kid behind the counter said something to the effect that he was crazy. The client went to his car, got a .38 and chased the kid, firing at him and hitting him in the back twice. Fortunately, the hospital was close and the kid survived, but he lost a kidney. I sent my client to the VA for a psych evaluation. I got a call from his psychiatrist stating under no circumstances should my client be out on the streets. I asked where he was and the psychiatrist said he was discharged and left the VA. I provided her with the paperwork to file an involuntary commitment where the client would be sent to the state mental hospital. The psychiatrist did not file the paperwork but issued a letter stating he was not competent. The client continued to walk the streets in his paranoid state. My client pleaded insanity and eventually pleaded guilty to a felony aggravated battery, but the firearm was removed from the charge because if convicted with the gun being part of the charge, the client would have automatically gone to prison. It was his first offense. He got probation. My client had no remorse for firing at the kid. Client kept complaining that the kid said the client slept with his sister. Client acted like the victim the entire sentencing. Once probation was graded, the client wrote a bar complaint against me because he was convicted of a crime. I received a letter from the bar, addressed to the client, closing the case without further review. Fortunately, I have not seen him since. He has probably passed away now. He was in his 70s then. What is the most Karen thing a Karen has ever done to you personally? 1. When I worked at the Home Depot, Karen told me that she didn't want any black men to install her flooring. I was in charge of arranging her order and told her that we don't select which individuals exactly will install her floor and that she'll get who she gets. She proceeds to have a fit about it, demands white installers and asks to speak to my manager. I'm so glad she did because my manager's name was Dwayne and he was a real big black dude. Turns out she didn't want to speak to the manager too. I deliver appliances for Best Buy. We had a woman call and complain that her fridge was not pre-cooled before it was delivered and that she had to wait for it to come down to temp. No one in the office was prepared for that one. 3. That I needed to leave the gym because I made her son feel like only fat people go to the gym. 4. Asked for my manager's personal cell phone number to complain that I 7 months pregnant at the time, would not carry a refrigerator that she had not paid for in the cost of her room, up to her second-story room. We did not have an elevator. Rather than just accept an upgrade for free because she didn't want to unpack her stuff, she refused to believe we had rooms without fridges and I was just being fat and lazy. When I refused to give her the cell phone number, she asked for corporate's number. I wrote it down on a sticky note with a smiley face. She came down later and asked to move rooms. I made her pay the difference. 5. Worked at a grocery store and a coworker put a 99-cent sticker on my shirt. We were 2 of maybe 5 employees, so we were all good friends and everything is funny when you got a part-time on a shift. So I just left it there. Some woman came through my line and asked me why I had a sticker on my shirt and I just kind of laughed it off. She asked if I thought it was funny and I was like, not really, but sort of. She asked if my coworker put it there, to which I responded, yes. She told me she was going to speak to the store owner because it was disrespectful to behave that way at work. She told me to call my manager and I did. But he was a super cool guy and knew this lady was a fucking idiot. She talked to the store owner and my manager about firing me to no avail. She accomplished nothing and was a bitch. The end. 6. Left her card in the machine at the McDonald's I was managing as a teenager. Rang me to say I needed to drive it out to her. That I ruined her night, ruined her family's night odor, free food, and that she'll be laying a formal complaint when I refused all of the above. She showed up an hour later with steam blowing out her ears, asking for her card back. Last we heard from her.
How did you learn to knock before entering your parents' room? I live at home with my parents and my 6 brothers. I'm a septuplet and we're all the same age. We were all at school today and when we got home, I heard my mom being oddly vocal in the bathroom. There's a flu going around so I thought she might be sick and so I went to go and check on her. The thing was I forgot to knock first and the door was ajar. Big mistake. I looked only to find my dad in the shower with her in the middle of some very freaky stuff. I saw my mom behind my dad, and my dad's back door getting violated like Taylor Swift by Kanye that one time. I had forgotten that my dad usually takes Fridays off so he was presumably alone with my mom all day doing the nasties. I was freaking out at the fact that I saw my mom through the steamed glass inside my dad and it was like looking at a train wreck. I wanted to look away. I should have looked away but I just stood there rooted to the spot, my brain frozen for a good 10 seconds like I didn't know how to react. I'll admit, it was kind of hot, but mostly traumatizing. It wasn't that intimacy between 2 married people is gross or anything. It was just that well, it hits differently when it's your mom and dad. I should have simply closed the door and walked away but instead I'm ashamed to admit to this but I gagged and said, gross. Out loud before running upstairs to my room and locking the door. My parents kept going as if I wasn't even in their house but the thing was, they heard me. They knew I was there and just kept going like it didn't even matter. Not that they should have to stop being busy because their teenager came home late and heard noises but still. When I came down for dinner tonight, my mom was laughing at me saying, well baby I hope you learn to knock before entering. And she kissed me on the head. I nodded and said nothing because what do you say at a time like this?
Am I the a-hole for breaking a patient's confidentiality to tell my friend that her boyfriend has a fatal disease? One of my closest friends, Amanda, started dating a guy, Matt, about 2 months ago. I'd met him twice before and he seemed pretty seedy to me, but she was happy, so overall I was happy for them. I work at our local hospital. I won't divulge too much about my role, but I am not involved in providing medical care, but I do have access to patient records and am permitted to look through them under certain circumstances with ethics approval. I came across Matt's chart just over a week ago. I was not snooping, I was explicitly gathering patient information for an approved task and he was one of the patients in the pile of charts. It's not too much of a coincidence. I was going through 500 patient records, and this is the only nearby hospital. I discovered that Matt had a fatal disease from his chart. I was unsure whether Amanda was aware. I wrestled with this in many different directions. Should I mind my own business and not violate confidentiality and risk her contracting the disease? Should I approach him first, even though it's not my place and we've only met twice? Should I go straight to her just to confirm that she knows? Ultimately, I felt an obligation to her as my friend, and to her well-being, so I told her. Knowing her, I felt like she was unaware since she is generally extremely risk-averse and something seemed off about this guy, so I felt like approaching him might not accomplish anything. She was shocked to find out about his status, and broke up with him. Amanda was thankful to me, but evidently she let him know how she found out, as I was let go from my position 2 days ago. I understood the risk I was taking, and was hoping it was a calculated risk, but now I'm wondering if I overstepped by breaking confidentiality.
My future sister-in-law had a meltdown after I refused to spend my husband's insurance on her wedding. Now she's threatening to cancel the wedding because she doesn't want to marry into a selfish family. My future sister-in-law had a meltdown after I refused to spend my husband's insurance on her wedding. Now she's threatening to cancel the wedding because she doesn't want to marry into a selfish family. My older brother proposed to his girlfriend back in December. I and my future sister-in-law have not been in a good relationship because aside from noticing that she is abusing my brother financially, I have seen her hitting my brother, and I tried to call the police. My brother still ended up choosing her side and refused to press charges. That's when I went low contact with him. However, my dad and stepmom decided to have a family dinner on their outdoor patio to discuss my brother's wedding last week. My brother called me and told me he needed my help with the preparation and would appreciate it if I helped with the planning, no matter how little I contributed. I agreed because I knew it would be one of the most memorable events of his life, and I should be there to support him no matter how I hated his bride-to-be. Dinner was uneventful, but afterward, my future sister-in-law pulled out a 3-ring binder and started handing out information packets about her wedding. When and where she wanted it, pictures of dresses she was considering, colors, ideas for catering, pictures of cakes, everything a well-prepared bride could come up with. My favorite page was a list of expenses, how much she expected everyone to contribute. She wanted $50,000 from our parents and $30,000 from me. I was appalled. I said, "You expect me to contribute? That's hilarious." I was met with a stern gaze from my future sister-in-law. "Oh my god, you're serious?" "Yeah, that's not happening." Cue the meltdown from the bride-to-be. Her dad speaks up and tells her that her parents would give her $70,000 to do what she wanted. She started crying. My dad chimes in and says, "Yeah, between the three of us, we will pay for a nice rehearsal dinner for 30 people and an open beer and wine bar at the reception. That's it." Then she lost it, and she started screaming, like holding her hands over her ears and shouting, "Why is everyone trying to ruin my life?" So I said, "This is where I leave." She stands up, comes to me, and gets in my face, telling me it's all my fault. She said I have money from my husband's insurance, so I should be willing to spend it on her because she will be a family. I just laughed, looked at my brother, and said, "Good luck with all that," and walked out. My Phil blew my phone up for 2 days, calling me names and telling me how awful I was. I haven't talked to my brother, but my dad said the wedding planning has been put on hold while she reevaluates whether she wants to marry into a selfish family. My stepmom told me the day after that she and my dad had seen Phil act like a brat a few times toward my brother, but never anything like that night at dinner. My dad told my brother what happened was ridiculous, and he and she owed me major apologies. He also let my brother know that he now has apprehensions about my brother getting married to her, and he wanted my brother to think about what he wanted, that if he decided to marry her anyway, he wouldn't know how much of our family would attend. My brother and I met for lunch at my dad's house today. When I walked in, he tried to hug me, but I wasn't having it. He did apologize. Sincerely, I believe. He told me that he knew about all the wedding stuff she had prepared but not the expense sheet, and that he had told her weeks ago what his parents were willing to pay for and that she could not ask me for money. He knew that she didn't listen to him, and he was pissed but didn't want to cause a scene in front of everyone. He went on to say that when they left, he blew up on her, and she told him she couldn't believe he was okay with his family being so selfish. It escalated with her packing a bag and going to a hotel because her parents said she couldn't go to their house. I asked him where they stood now, and he just shrugged. I wondered if he still wanted to marry her, but I said I didn't care before he answered. It was his life. He could do what he wanted, but I would not. And if he did marry her, our relationship would change forever.
My religious husband has stopped loving our son because he came out as gay. So last month my 16-year-old son came out to us as gay. My husband and I both grew up in religious households, but when we had children, I never wanted to force anything onto them. But my husband disagreed and wanted to force religion onto our children. We argued a lot about it, as he wanted to take our kids out of school and homeschool them via Bible and scriptures, but a threat of divorce has put that insanity to a stop. Still, he pushes religion onto them in subtle ways. My son had been so nervous for a while before he came out to us, especially his father, and he begged us to take him out to a restaurant alone, without his siblings. He looked desperate, so we both agreed and my mother babysat for us. We arrived and I just had a feeling I knew what he was going to say. And when the food arrived, he finally said it, "Mom, Dad, I'm gay." I held his hand and told him that I loved him, we both did, and he will always be our son. From hindsight, I now realize my husband was being unusually quiet, but at the time I was so elated and my son looked so relieved. When we got back home that evening, my husband went straight upstairs. I assumed he went to the bathroom, but when he came down, he had a suitcase. He grabbed my son and dragged him along with the suitcase, out of the house still yelling at him. He started calling him the F word, telling him he is going to jail and so on. Our son started crying on the driveway. I ran after them of course. My husband called him names, and pushed him onto the driveway. He basically threw my son out. I was mad. I had no reason to legitimate reason that my husband would react this way. I knew he was still deeply religious. But this is his son for crying out loud. I was so mad, I stood between them and told my husband to respect his son for who he is. Now, he's never been a violent man, but for the first time in the 17 years we've been married, I saw him as violent. He barged past me and laid hands on our son. I was so angry, I threatened to call the police if he didn't leave right now. He left the house angrily and drove away. He has been staying with his brother since. I love my husband and my son, I want them both to be happy, but my son is 16. He can't live without his parents' help, my husband can. I chose my son over my husband. The moment he laid hands on my son, he lost all my respect. I don't think I could ever look at him the same way. Now my son blames himself for me being upset with his father. I keep telling him it's not his fault, but it doesn't help that whenever their father does come home, he poisons our other children's minds to think it is their older brother's fault. I just want my family to be peaceful again, but my husband is refusing to talk to me for as long as I defend my son. Last week, he suggested a divorce. I love my husband so much, but if he doesn't accept my son and apologize for hurting him, I don't think I could stay married to him. I got poop-faced and intoxicated, called my boss. Last night, I got completely effed up. I was out bar hopping with a few of my hometown friends, and I blacked out very early into the night. Apparently, I intoxicated dialed my boss. I have never done it before, but she is very chill so I wasn't concerned. When I walked into work this morning, I expected to be made fun of or pushed around a bit, but it was quite the opposite. I guess my phone call made her realize that I trusted her and saw her as a friend, so she decided to trust me too. She called me into her office, and for the better part of the morning, we trauma dumped on each other. I told her about my rough relationship with my family and she told me about problems that she was having with her relationship. At the end of the conversation, she told me that she loves having me at work and that I was her favorite employee, and it completely made my day. It was a beautiful bonding moment that I never knew I needed.
I'm scared to marry my partner simply because the wedding would be so embarrassing for me. My side would be nearly empty and his side would be full. Me and my partner come from different worlds. His family has a house cleaner, my mom was a house cleaner. I don't mind that his family is wealthier than mine, but they are also so close. I love it and at times, I envy it. I moved across the country to live with my boyfriend, and that's where I got to know his family. They're really kind, but sometimes I sense his mom worries about me, being just 22, moving so far away from my own family. In the 6 months since I've been here, I haven't had much chance to visit my family, unlike his family, who are very close-knit. In fact, in the last 9 months, including the time before we moved here when we were in a different place for a summer job, I've only seen my family once. I believe she's worried because I overheard her asking my boyfriend if I intend to visit my family soon. During our conversation, I mentioned that I have both an adoptive family and a birth family. Her reaction was a mix of surprise and relief as she said, "So you do have a lot of people who love you." I assured her that I do, but I explained that, unlike my boyfriend's family, my family isn't very close. We don't stay in touch on a daily or even weekly basis. My relationship with my adoptive family was difficult, and I hardly saw my mom until I was 18, except for rare occasions every few years. This was because she struggled financially and had mental health issues, along with poor choices in men, so she couldn't take care of me. As a result, not many people from my family would likely attend my wedding, and those who would come might not be as emotionally invested as my boyfriend's family is in him. I realize it may come off as insecure or jealous, but honestly, I feel that way, and it's a bit embarrassing. Picture a large, close-knit Italian family that's really organized, compared to my chaotic family background. His parents even pay our rent because they want to, and they did the same for his sisters while he's studying. This is a stark contrast to when I lived with my mom, where she made me pay rent just to stay there. Since moving here, we've made some mutual friends who I know will support both of us, but naturally, they're closer to him since they've been friends for life. Also, after I moved, I lost touch with many of my friends back home, not that I had many to begin with. This was partly because I only lived there from ages 18 to 21 and wasn't in school, which limited my social circle. I literally adore my boyfriend so much. We've had our ups and downs, but he's talked about wanting to marry me, which I love the idea of being his wife. But the thought of the wedding scares me so much. The thought of feeling like I have no one who would honestly care to be there other than my mom and one of my sisters scares me. My mom cut me off for being homophobic and disruptive in my brother's wedding, and I'm glad she did it. Last week, my older brother Rick and one of my best friends, Hannah, got married. I was the maid of honor since I knew both the bride and groom and I was the one who introduced them, besides taking care of the bride. I also helped her invite Rick's and my side of the family, as she only knew our immediate family and a couple of cousins, so I made sure to invite all of our relatives, which amounted to around 30 people, and reminded them to RSVP. Because of this, I knew who was coming and who wasn't. As the ceremony was about to start, all of my relatives had arrived except for one person, my other older brother and the middle child, Jeremy. I called Jeremy multiple times, but he didn't answer. I informed Rick and my parents about the situation. Rick assured me it was fine and that we could continue with the plan. However, my mom seemed oddly excited and cryptically told me to wait for it. Despite all of that, we proceeded with the plan, and the ceremony ran smoothly. The reception followed, and that's when Jenny, formerly known as Jeremy, unexpectedly burst into the wedding with a broad smile and highly inappropriate wedding attire. Jenny wore a beige-colored modified wedding dress with a sheer top, revealing their torso. The dress is a puffy princess gown, featuring a long, torn-looking train with bright purple and black paint splatters. To top it off, they had applied elaborate makeup. I was initially shocked and then horrified by their appearance. Although they technically didn't do anything yet, the attention shifted from the wedding to them. Mom stood up from her seat, embraced Jenny, and loudly expressed how proud she was. Despite Jenny's attempts to gracefully lead Mom back to the table, the damage was done. I exchanged a worried glance with Hannah, who seemed on the brink of tears. I decided to address the issue and pulled Jenny aside for a confrontation. We argued about their inappropriate behavior, while they defended it as a form of self-expression. Mid-argument, one of the groomsmen, also Hannah's older brother, intervened with security personnel and instructed Jenny to change into more suitable attire or leave immediately. Jenny protested, calling us homophobic and other nasty names. The security team escorted them out, and I returned to my table. Mom noticed my return and asked me about Jenny. I explained that Jenny had been asked to leave due to their refusal to change into appropriate clothing. In response, my mom hurled hurtful words at me, labeling me as a homophobic bitch and saying "you are dead" to me before leaving. She later returned with Jenny wearing a more simple dress about an hour later. Now, let me explain why I'm relieved that she cut ties with me. I've been raised in a conservative, traditional, Christian family. My parents, especially my mom, are very sensitive to changes and new ideas. Jenny has always been the golden child. They were born premature and weren't breathing. They had to be resuscitated and kept at the hospital for months. Jenny is frail and my mom always said that the fact that they are still alive is a miracle. Mom always pays attention to Jenny because of their poor health. Jenny became accustomed to the constant attention and disliked being out of it. When I was born, Jenny threw tantrums daily and even exhibited dangerous behaviors, throwing hard toys at me. This prompted my parents to entrust my care to my grandparents for my safety. The deal was my aunt would take care of Rick and Jenny on the weekends and my parents would stay with my grandparents to take care of me. The idea is so that I still have an attachment to my parents. It worked for 3 weeks, then Jenny started throwing more tantrums because mom is not home and hurting my aunts by biting or pulling her hair. Furthermore, Jenny got a high fever because of too much crying and refusal to eat without mom, so, after only a month, my mom gave up the idea and stopped visiting me. My dad stuck to the plan and brought Rick with him most of the time. By the way, this is also why my mom had her tubes tied, although it is against her beliefs. I returned to our home when I was 5. At that point, I didn't have any relationship with mom and Jenny, but we managed. Jenny is very close with mom and mom always took their side. They would snitch to mom when Rick and I did something bad or blame us for something they did. Rick moved out at 18 because of this. Rick and Jenny shared a room when Rick was a high schooler and Jenny was in middle school. Rick had a secret girlfriend and Jenny found out because they went through Rick's backpack and found a love letter given by the girlfriend. Mom always told us to not date, so when Jenny tattled to her, she was pissed. Mom forced Rick to break up with his then girlfriend, which he reluctantly does so. The next year, Jenny becomes a freshman in the same high school where Rick is a senior. Jenny immediately got a girlfriend. Mom was excited about it, telling Jenny to bring her often. Every time Jenny's girlfriend came to visit, Rick would come to my room because Jenny would tell him off. One day, Mom was cleaning Rick's and Jenny's room and found a ripped rubber wrapper. Although it is obvious who uses it, Mom immediately blames Rick, even though Rick doesn't have a girlfriend nor brings a girl home. He was grounded for the rest of his senior year and barred from going to prom. Their relationship was hostile from then on out until he moved out after graduation. When I was 15, I realized that I am a lesbian. Due to my family upbringing, I kept it a secret and only told Rick. Unfortunately, Jenny discovered this somehow and threatened to reveal it to Mom unless I became their personal servant. I agreed. I would do everything for them, their homework and projects, clean after them when Mom was not home, give them part of my allowance, etc. But, when Dad went on a business trip for 2 months and was not home to defend me, Jenny told Mom and Mom kicked me to the curb, saying I needed to pray to God and clean my sinful thinking. I called Rick and he picked me up, allowing me to stay with him. When my dad went home, he was furious at Mom and demanded she apologize to me. Mom refuses, but Dad threatens he will divorce her if she does not yield. In the end, she comes to Rick's apartment, begging me to come home. Things seemed to go back to normal, but when we fought, sometimes Mom would bring this up and state my shameful way of living almost cost her marriage. I moved out as soon as I could support myself financially. Anyway, I wanted to cut her off, but I love my dad and want to visit him as much as I can. Furthermore, I don't want to be seen as the ungrateful daughter by other relatives, so I kept the relationship with minimal contact. However, now that she cuts me off first, I don't have to deal with that witch anymore. It's ironic she labeled me as homophobic despite her own rejection of me when discovering my sexuality. I'm more than happy to be free from her toxicity.
Has your ex ever come to you begging for forgiveness? I absolutely loved my last girlfriend. Her name was Jess. We were engaged and set to live a very happy life together. However, there was always one guy who I was kind of insecure about, as she always made jokes about how attractive he was. Well, our wedding came around and everything was planned. The wedding was literally 4 days away. However, the guy who I was insecure about was in town, and newly single, as declared on his social media. I woke up the morning 4 days until my wedding to find a note stapled to my fridge. It was very long, 6 pages to be exact. The letter explained that she is sorry for bailing on the wedding when it is so close, but Jason is back in town, and she is sick and tired of hiding their love. She confessed to cheating on me with him for months before this and said the guilt had caught up to her and she no longer live with it. Her and Jason were moving to a different state and she told me she is changing her number and to never call her again. My entire world shattered, and I drowned myself with alcohol and substances over the next year. However, over time I was able to stand back up on my feet. However, all of this left a permanent hole in my heart. 2 whole years later my doorbell rang. Standing there was Jess, in tears. She said how sorry she was, and how she wanted me to take her back. She gave me the biggest ever sob story. They dated for 2 years, and told me Jason repeatedly laid hands on her severely, and showed me a scar he left on her neck. He stole all her money and got her pregnant, then left without a word, and she has no idea where he is. She told me she now has a 3-month-old son and would love it if I could give her another chance. She then, word for word, asked me to be the child's dad. I thought about it, and every part of me wanted to just say yes, as I love this woman more than everything. However, I could not let history pass. So I invited her in, fucked her for the whole day, then at nighttime kicked her out and told me to never call me again. I did meth and ended up in Alaska. I was in Tennessee for college. It was a Saturday during junior year spring break. Me and my friends were smoking a lot of pot, then we did cocaine. We finished and ran out of cocaine, so we tracked down our dealer. He was out of cocaine but had this other shit. We tried it, and it was great. We spent $3,000 and bought all that he had. That was my first experience with meth. There were a lot of chicks there too, some hot, some fat, some skinny, all crazy. I got no sleep that night, and a little bit of memory and consciousness. Around when the sun came up, I started blacking out. Probably a few hours later, or maybe days, I don't know, I came to my senses briefly. I was walking in some woods carrying a shovel and wearing a backpack. I have never seen trees like these before, and something felt wrong. So I sit down and look in the backpack. There were lots of meth in baggies and a wad of cash. My cell phone says it was 2 a.m., but it was bright out with the sun. My phone also says I'm on roaming and now out of minutes. I thought it was a dream. I was confused and tired, so I just decided to do more meth in the middle of the woods. I blacked out again. The next time I woke up, I was in a hotel room in Fairbanks, Alaska. That's why it was almost daylight at 2 a.m. I had no idea how I got there. It's Friday now, it has been 6 days. I no longer have the backpack full of meth, but I do have a pocket full of $100 bills. I took a taxi to the airport, bought a plane ticket for Saturday night, went to Walmart and got a change of clothes, went back to the hotel, got cleaned up and had a shower, ordered a pizza, and slept till the next day and flew back to Tennessee. I was back in class Monday. I asked everyone, and none of my friends knew what happened. They said I left with some girl and her sister and sister's boyfriend and never came back. I still wonder how I got into the Alaskan forest and how I got past airport security. Maybe it was all a fever dream. My husband of 7 years is really angry that I refused to quit my job to become a stay-at-home wife. I love my husband and he's an amazing man, but we have flaws like everyone else. We both aged out of foster care and met at a youth fulfillment program, basically a work camp that helps kids with no families learn the fundamentals for living, finances, certificates, as needed. We were both 18 and stayed in contact after the program ended. He made it clear he liked me, but I was truly petrified of men at that point in my life due to past experiences and rejected him a bit harshly. I reached out to apologize and we became friends. Then a year or two later I saw he posted on Snapchat he was in my area. I asked if he would want to go on a date so I could practice being comfortable around guys and he agreed. He never made a move, never touched me, never made weird eye contact. If I said no he didn't ask a second time, not even as a suggestion. We went on these platonic dates for months with nothing happening, and one day I asked for a hug and then asked for a kiss and he asked me to be his girlfriend. We got married a year after and our 7-year anniversary is around the corner. We agreed we would not even think about having kids until we were older since both of us were the product of young parents. We've really just only focused on getting by using as little money as possible and saving up every dime to buy a house. Thankfully, we got our house a few months ago and we were both able to quit our second jobs and for the first time only work regular 9-5s. Yay! I've discovered I really like gardening and baking and I love having a real home. We have been discussing adding to our family by having a baby and I feel very ready to be a mom. Scared still, yes, but ready. But my husband brought up how sad I would be if I had to quit since I've worked so hard. I told him I had zero plans to quit, I would only take maternity leave. Plus my company allows maternal and paternal remote options for 1 year after birth, so I can just work from home if needed. I know it's a lot to do with a newborn but giving up the security of my paycheck is simply not an option. He told me this was what we worked for, to make our own perfect family opposite from what ours were like, and I was blindsiding him by changing my plans, and I told him no plan has changed, I can have a career and be a mom. Plenty of women do it. He doesn't have to quit his job to be a dad, so why should I? He said it wouldn't work for a baby's needs, and I told him okay, since I make more money than you do, why don't you quit and I go back to work remotely after healing from birth? That way we have both hands on deck and we don't have a severe loss of income, as I make $89K/year and he makes $52K/year. He mentioned that if I trusted him fully this shouldn't be a problem. I told him I trust him, but I don't trust our current economy, but I left out that I really do genuinely think quitting my job with no savings, wiped out by getting the house, and relying on a man is absolutely stupid. He had plans made previously with his parents and had to leave, so we said we would pick the conversation back up when he gets home, but he's very, very upset. Madder than I have ever seen him, and I don't understand why he just assumed I would quit. Not only do I not understand it, but it makes me trust him a lot less than I did yesterday. I have a bad habit of running for the hills when problems come up, and not gonna lie, this is making me really nervous. Thank you for reading all of this if you have. I'm open ears to what could be going through his mind or why he is thinking like this, really just doesn't seem logical to me. He's been watching all of these videos of stay-home wives/girlfriends, and I feel like this is influencing him a lot.
My golden child sister made my life a living hell for years just because she likes eating nails, and my parents think she's in the right. My sister has a habit of biting her nails, but it's way worse than you might think. She has been doing it since she was little, and no matter what anyone says, she won't stop. She also gets picked on for biting her nails until all her fingers were bloody in school. My parents, instead of fixing her habit, have for some reason decided that there's nothing wrong with her. They got the school to agree that she could spend recess and lunch inside one of the classrooms, so she won't get bullied. However, since they did not want her to be lonely, I had to be in the classroom with her, and I wasn't allowed to spend recess or lunch with the other kids. Thanks to that, the other kids now think that I have the same habits as her and bully me whenever they get the chance. But that's not all. If I got invited to a birthday party or over to another kid's house, I was not allowed to go unless my sister could go too. That obviously led to my friends abandoning me and never inviting me over again. I ended up not having any friends at school or in our neighborhood throughout middle school. High school was even worse. Besides biting her fingernails until they were bloody, my sister would take off her socks and shoes and bite her toenails too. It wouldn't matter if she was at school sitting at her desk, or we were at a restaurant or in church or anywhere else. She would do it right then and there. If anyone tries to stop her from biting either fingernails or toenails, she would cry, and our parents would step in to stop them from bullying her. They went as far as to call it a hate crime whenever someone told my sister to stop. Last year I used my allowance to buy press-on French manicure nails from the store because I wanted to have pretty nails. My sister found out and told my parents, and they made me say sorry to her and grounded me for a month. I argued that what I did had nothing to do with her, so how was I in the wrong? But they didn't listen. Thanks to all that, I had decided that I wanted to get as far away from my sister as possible. So the second I turned 18 last month, I moved into my dorm at university. I finally let out a sigh of relief because I no longer had to walk on eggshells. The next few days were like bliss. I was actually making friends and didn't have to deal with the horrible smell my sister's feet would give out. However, yesterday my parents contacted me. They were enraged that I would leave their house and move out without their permission. They wanted me to come back immediately because my sister was lonely and thought I was abandoning her. But I never want to see her again, so I don't know what to do. I am scared that they might contact the college admission office and ruin my life if I don't do what they're asking.
What's the most heartbreaking thing you've ever had to tell someone? A few years ago when I was in high school, I volunteered to be a big sister for a preteen girl in 6th grade who needed a mentor in her life. She had a shady home life and it was obvious she was struggling with herself. I really related to this girl. She was just like me when I was that age. I had developed before anybody else, so I was constantly bullied for my looks, my home life was rocky, I had no self-esteem, my grades sucked, you know, the usual middle school crap. Anyways, after a few months of working with her, I could see she was finally feeling a bit more confident with herself. She would tell me how she was able to put on the first outfit that came to her mind and not change it 10 times before she left for school. She finally felt comfortable in her own skin. A big deal if you ask any preteen girl. Then, a week later, her butthole teacher, who I hated with a passion, took me aside and told me that as a part of being a big sister, it was my job to talk to her about her rank body odor. Which I honestly never noticed. I didn't feel comfortable about talking to her about it, so I asked if this was something the school nurse could handle. Butthole teacher will be as, little sister will be LS, and I'll be me. As, because you're her big sister, I need you to explain to LS that her rank body odor is disturbing the other kids in class, and they don't want to be around her odors. Make sure she knows what deodorant is, and how to use it. Also, it wouldn't harm anything to ask her how often she takes showers. Me, to be honest with you, I'm not comfortable having this conversation with LS. If this is such a problem in the classroom, then I think the school nurse should handle it instead. As, look, it's your job to make sure she's keeping herself healthy. I'd hate to report your defiant behavior to your supervisor. Me being stupid and young, I didn't want to get into trouble and risk the possibility of losing this friendship, so I pulled LS aside. Me, I'm sorry for what I'm about to ask, I don't want to, but it's apparently my job too. LS, you can ask me anything. Me, do you wear deodorant or take showers at least every other day? LS, I take a shower every night and put on deodorant every morning. Why? Me, well, I guess the other kids don't want to hang out with you because you have some body odor. Then she said the thing that broke my heart into pieces. The other kids just don't like me. And just like that, all my hard work into boosting her self-esteem went down the drain. Her bubbly smile and attitude gone. It took me weeks to forgive myself for even agreeing to say something to LS. I still regret every moment of that day, and I'll never forgive myself entirely for not standing my ground and having the school nurse handle it in a more appropriate manner. I told my girlfriend that my girl best friend is prettier than her. I have been dating my girlfriend for almost a year now. Other than my girlfriend, the second most important person in my life is my girl best friend. She is a beautiful and kind soul, and we hooked up once at a college party, but that was due to intoxication and nothing else. We've been best friends for more than a decade, and she's been there for me for all my lowest points. I literally would not have survived this long without her. Our relationship is mostly platonic. She flirts with me in a joking way sometimes, and I partake in this friendly banter sometimes, but it is all just jokes. I admit that I've had a crush on her before, even before we slept together, but we both admitted that it would be better for us to stay as best friends, and that was that. We've been each other's support systems for a long time, and I help her through her issues with her boyfriend all the time, and even trust each other more than our own parents. Recently, my girlfriend asked me if I think she's more attractive than my best friend. My best friend is a successful fashion model. She looks like your typical model, is skinny with clear skin, while my girlfriend is honestly short, quite chubby, and has a lot of acne. I love my girlfriend. I really do. She has social anxiety and thus sometimes goes for long periods of time without contacting me. I have had thoughts about hooking up with my best friend, but always push those thoughts back as I'm a good person who would not cheat. I accept my girlfriend and love her as she is. When my girlfriend asked that question, I answered that yes, I believe my best friend is way more attractive than her. I specifically said way more attractive, as I am an honest person and that is my honest opinion. She got offended and started crying. She hasn't talked to me in a while either. I don't understand why she's acting that way. I mean, the answer was obvious, but it doesn't make me love her any less. I clearly chose to date her instead of other women. I accept her as a whole package. I told my best friend about my answer, and she laughed it off and agreed with me that she was indeed prettier. Me and her discussed it, and I could not understand why my girlfriend was so mad. Was I expected to very blatantly lie to my girlfriend? Wouldn't it have been worse if it wasn't honest? Anyone with eyes could clearly see who was the more attractive one. Wouldn't it be a slap to her to just lie to her face that way? I don't get why I have to be the bad guy in this situation.
What is something bad you have done with no regrets? Part 1. A drunk driver hit my parked car, left a huge dent in the front driver's side door, and then drove away. I happened to be looking out the window at the time and saw the whole thing, including his plate number. Cops got there not long after and took my statement. After a couple days and a couple phone calls, I found out nothing was going to come of it because he was the son of the sheriff the next county over. Fast forward a couple months, I see his car parked behind a local bar within walking distance of my apartment. I got out my hunting knife and sliced all 4 of his tires, and made a couple trips around it, destroying the paint job. Yellow Pontiac Sunfire, and I still remember the damn plate number even after almost 20 years.
I've really enjoyed watching my neighbor fall in love. My bedroom window faces my neighbor's kitchen and front yard. I don't try to spy on him or deliberately watch him, but our windows face each other, so when I'm at my desk I often will catch a momentary glimpse of his life. He got divorced or separated close to 5 years ago. The lawn started to get long. His kid was a bit more free range. You could see the kitchen table getting covered with letters and dishes. The back porch was falling apart. It was sad to see. I've never spoken to him, but we wave to each other sometimes and he seems nice enough. But a few months ago I noticed him staying up really late often. He had put a new computer on the kitchen table, and on my many bathroom breaks I would see him up at the computer, sometimes with the curtain pulled but still with the computer glow on the edges. Soon after the lawn was cut, the table was cleared off. A few days later an unknown car was parked on our street outside his house. It showed up a few more times until one day I glance out to see him holding hands walking with a mystery woman. She was beautiful honestly, and they looked so happy. They were talking and laughing and walking back from getting coffee. The lawn's been neat. He's doing what looks like improvement projects again. And he's even shaving and standing up taller. It's really nice to see. Since then I smile whenever the new car is parked outside my neighbor's house, and the lights have still been on super late, but now it's upstairs, and I don't get a view in that one, but I'm sure they're having a great time. Can't really tell anyone I'm sort of spying on my neighbor, so figured I'd let Reddit know. No one came to my birthday party. I'm honestly so done. I finally hit rock bottom. It's 4 a.m., and all the alcohol I've drank to numb the pain is finally coming out of my system, and I'm sitting here alone sobbing now, finally feeling in full force the gravity of what has happened. Today was my 25th birthday. Long story short, I threw a birthday party for my close friends of about 10 to 15 people that I've known intimately for years and have been through a lot with. Just for background, I feel like every time I plan a party or get together, I have to constantly remind people of it in subtle ways in the coming days or they won't come. Almost like I have to beg them to be there. What do you want on your pizza? Oh, I can't wait to see you. Should I get wine? Etc. To keep it in their minds or they'll find something else better. 2 of them forgot the party and made other plans. When I texted them if they were coming, they apologized and said they were going out of town. And I confronted them about forgetting the party I mentioned 2 weeks ago. And they were nonchalantly like, oh, sorry. Many others canceled the day of the party for bullcrap excuses like having to clean, not feeling good, I'm just so tired, etc. One was even so irresponsible to drink herself into a stupor last night to the point she texted me the morning and said she couldn't be there because she was sick from drinking too much. Absolutely irresponsible to do that knowing you have somewhere to be tomorrow. It hurt me a lot. One canceled because we had a 40% chance of having a thunderstorm warning in the evening and they were concerned about being in the rain. It was sunny outside and is yet to rain 12 hours later. In the end, 2 of 15 showed up an hour after the party supposedly started. I was grateful, but honestly just sad and humiliated. I just wanted to be alone. I'm sitting on $200 worth of food, decorations, and the most painful, my unopened birthday cake. I paid a lot for it and I was really looking forward to enjoying it with my friends. But now, I just want to trash it and not look at it. You see, the reason this party meant so much for me is because I've had an awful summer. I've had 3 people close to me die, so I haven't had much time to see people. And I'm a week out from a risky surgery that could end my life. My friends know this. I don't talk about it constantly, because it is so draining to the vibe. But it has been mentioned. I just wanted to enjoy one last get together with the people I cared about. I've never felt so sad, betrayed, and violated. I've finally hit rock bottom. Psychologists, what was the most disturbing story you have ever heard? A young girl is living with her mother and father. Her only recollection of her father is that he was super nice to her, but mean to her mom. One day, after her dad was particularly mean to her mom, they packed all of their stuff and left her childhood home to live with her mother's sister. Her mother would stay up late at night worried for her life and the life of her children. She sat down with her sister at some point and said, "He's going to end my life. I know he will. I want you to take care of my kids when he does." This girl had a brother and a sister, and one day on the way to her little brother's baseball practice a large truck started following them. Her father was driving. He began to rear-end the car attempting to run them off the road. This was on a residential street. Eventually the car was rammed into a tree. Her mother told the oldest daughter to grab her cell phone and call 911. But she couldn't find the phone. So they got out of the car. At this point her father climbed out of his car and drew his firearm. He alived her mother and brother and then aimed at her. He opened fire and got her in the shoulder, and before she lost consciousness she told her younger sister to play dead. The whole family was rushed to the hospital and the 2 girls were the only survivors. After he was arrested they found a note in his car. It said, "I love them so much. If I can't have them, nobody can." He is now awaiting the death penalty and she testifies every time he files for an appeal. Am I the a-hole for advising my friend not to come out as trans? Okay, so I have a friend, Sam, who is a female to male trans individual. However, I am one of very few people who know this and he generally still presents as female. This is because his family are all, quite frankly, horrible people. Seriously, I've been to their house 3 times since Sam and I met in middle school and each time one of them has launched into some sort of hateful rant completely unprompted. Now, here is where it gets complicated. Horrible as he might be, Sam's grandfather is very wealthy and Sam is set to inherit $2.5 million when he dies, which will probably be soon due to the man's rather serious health conditions. Sam has seen the will and knows this for a fact, but he also knows he'll be disowned if he came out as trans to his family. Because of this, Sam has stayed in the closet and continues to present a female thought he took to cutting his hair shorter and dressing more androgynously in college for the sake of staying in good standing with his grandfather. Sam has always been very open about his plan to fully come out and deal with the consequences after he had the money. But today at 5:30 in the morning Sam called and woke me up to tell me that he was considering coming out to his family soon and that he thought it was dishonest to continue with the life or money but asked for my advice. I was shocked but honestly told him I thought it was a bad idea. I explained that the $2.5 million would allow Sam to finally live his dream life, pay off student debts, get a gender change surgery, maybe get a house. Then I pointed out that Sam would almost certainly be thrown out of the house for doing so. He still lives with his parents for some complicated reasons and he wouldn't be able to stay with me if that happened because, on top of living in a 1-bedroom apartment, I babysit my 6-year-old immunocompromised younger brother twice a week and I cannot risk cross-contamination from Sam, who is an essential worker. I also wasn't shy about making my opinion that his family wasn't worthy of honesty extremely clear. After I was done explaining all of this, Sam just burst into tears and before hanging up, I was confused, but it was also only 5:45, so I just rolled over and went back to bed. Later in the morning, I woke up to a bunch of text messages from Sam saying that I was a bad friend, a horrible person, and claiming I am against him and his people. I broke up with my boyfriend on his birthday for horrible actions he did when he was a teenager. I don't know whether this count as a pro-revenge, but here is my story, which happened some years ago. I, 26F at the time, had just started dating Thomas, 28M, and things seemed promising. Very sweet man, educated and quite smart, good looks. After 7 weeks of dating, he invited me and 2 of his childhood friends, let's call them Alex and Bart, for a long 29th birthday celebration weekend at his father's country house in a small French town. His father was going to be around as well and I was very excited to meet everyone. Day 1, Friday, is fun. I am happy to get along well with Thomas' father, a smart and caring man. Day 2, Saturday, after a very nice day, we enjoy a party in the garden with the neighbors, including some friends of Thomas. After a few hours and lots of drinks, a group of people gather around a small campfire and start sharing childhood memories. This is where things go wrong. At first, of course, innocent and dumb stories as you would expect, but then, Thomas and his friends started sharing really sick stuff. In particular, they told a story about how, when they were 14 or 15 years old, they found very amusing to bully for almost 6 months Arthur, a boy of their school who was very isolated and shy. Making jokes, calling names, you name it. As if this was not enough, they created a fake girl profile on MSN Messenger, a computer platform to exchange live messages that we used in years 2000s, and spent effing months, exchanging messages with him under the false girl identity, flirting and developing a false relationship with the poor boy. Some people were in the confidence at school and it became a big and cruel joke behind Arthur's back. They used pictures of Bart's real cousin and the boy truly thought he had some kind of online girlfriend to whom he even sent confessions and love messages. At some point they got bored and scheduled a false rendezvous IRL, asking the boy to take a bus for 2 or 3 hours, wearing a t-shirt Elmer the Elephant, based on a private joke. Obviously there was no one waiting for him and they did not know how long he waited over there, by himself. If Arthur had not already understood what was going on, he found out the next day at school after Thomas and Bart told the story to everyone and even shared the love messages that Arthur had been writing. The poor boy stopped coming to class and apparently changed school, and it is easy to imagine that this must have been extremely traumatizing to him. Do you think that Thomas, Alex and Bart had any bit of shame about it? Not a bit of remorse, in particular on Thomas and Bart's side. They kept making jokes about it and even seemed to regret that they were not good enough at being evil to convince the boy to send nudes or sexy pics. I don't even want to imagine what would have happened if he had done so. To say that I felt uncomfortable would be a gross understatement. I was absolutely horrified and started to despise Thomas more than anything. I was not the only one shocked. Thomas' father, who heard the end of the story, had the most disappointed look in the eyes. His stupid son was so drunk that he did not even notice it. I escaped the party immediately after that and got back to the house. I could not sleep at all this night and I kept thinking about the evening and how Thomas was still finding this funny. I heard him coming to bed around 4 a.m. but I pretended I was asleep. Day 3, Sunday, was the actual birthday, and the initial plan was that I would take Thomas on a one-to-one fancy surprise date for lunch nearby and then we would meet the group for a late afternoon party. But instead, I woke up very early on Sunday morning, took all my stuff in silence and went alone to the train station where I took a direct train heading back to Paris. I decided to send a text to Thomas wishing him happy birthday and telling him to meet me at a certain location 1 hour from the house for a surprise and that I needed to go a little bit in advance to make sure that everything would be perfect. I had picked the location randomly, using Google Maps, to gain time. Thomas read the text around 10 a.m. when he woke up. He responded with excitement that he would follow religiously the instructions. When he arrived there at 12:30, I told him to wait further as there was little delay on something. Then I asked him to meet me at a restaurant which was 30 minutes drive from the initial location. When he arrived at 13:15, I texted him that I was on my way, would arrive in 20 minutes and that he will understand when he sees me why I made him wait. I also asked him to order some food and the most expensive bottle on the menu. Around 13:30 he started calling me several times and sent a lot of worried texts, and after 45 minutes I responded, in French, "So, how does it feel to have people play with your feelings?" Then I stopped responding. I let him call and text the entire afternoon, but never responded. At some point an unknown number called me. It was his friend Alex asking what was going on and that Thomas' birthday was completely ruined because of what I did. I just responded, "This is an extremely small payback for what you did to Arthur. Tell Thomas to stop calling me." And hung up. I blocked them. I still felt bad the entire evening as I had started to grow attached to Thomas back then. The following days, a common friend called me to say that my reaction was completely absurd and unfair, that it was not my role to punish someone for actions they did as a teenager, that they were adult ways of saying things and that I had been completely crazy. Only a few people supported what I did, everyone else seemed to think that I was a bitch. Thomas tried to fix things and win me back for a few months afterwards. I never responded to any of his messages. I don't regret it. I simply hope that Arthur, who should be 35 or 36 years old now, is well. The police found a mass grave in my backyard. 26. That's how many bodies they found in the pit below my house. It was an earthquake that brought them to light. If not for that, I'm not sure I would have ever known they were down there. When the ground shifted, a putrid smell seeped up from below and permeated the entire house. Trying to locate the source, I shined my flashlight through the access hatch for the crawl space. That's when I saw an arm, a human arm, poking up through the dirt. Immediately, I called the police, and that's when my life turned into a circus. Nothing like this had ever happened in our small town before, and the media had a field day. Investigators started to identify some of the bodies. Local news outlets dubbed it the Alphabet Murders. Strangely, they appeared to have met their ends in alphabetical order, one per year, spanning back 26 years. All women in their late teens and early 20s. Amanda Zeller was the last victim, Karen Abbott the first. Of course, my wife and I were the primary suspects. We'd been arrested and swabbed for DNA to test against forensic evidence they found under the house when the very first bodies were being unearthed. However, I knew they wouldn't find a trace of me or my wife down there. Neither of us had ever ventured below the house before. Though I was sure they'd find a connection for me to who I knew to be the real killers, my parents. I had only inherited the house from my evil, abusive pricks for parents a few months prior. This was after they'd lost control of their vehicle and driven off a cliff. Good riddance was my first thought when I was informed of their deaths. I'd never been more than a punching bag for the both of them, something to scream at, smack, and berate at home, then paraded out in front of the neighbors as some perfect little child. Yeah, some perfect little family we had. It was all BS. They were a nightmare. So I ran away when I was 15 and never spoke with them again. Shockingly though, they left me the house. I figured maybe it was a final screw you to me when I saw the state of disrepair they left it in. At least it paid off, but it was going to need a lot of work if I was going to sell it for a good price. That's the only reason why I moved back in. And now I realize they weren't just evil, they were sick, sadistic demons. Both of their DNA was all over Amanda Zeller. They'd done it all together. The most shocking part was, though, that when they tested my DNA against my parents, it showed I wasn't a familial match. I wasn't their son. We were baffled until they found an older grave, separate from the pit, that contained a young couple whose DNA did match mine. Their first victims.